Mayor's Commission on Racial Equity. Please take note that this is being recorded. May I ask someone to call the roll? Commissioner Edith Aries.
Is present.
Police Chief Jeff Asopardi.
I do not believe that he is here, at least yet.
Commissioner Gladys Baumer.
Yes, present.
Commissioner Norm Faria.
Present.
City Manager Mike Futrell.
Present.
Commissioner Cheska Ibasan.
Present.
Commissioner Vanessa McGowan.
Present.
Commissioner Jarvis Monson.
Present.
School Board President Patricia Murray.
Present.
Council Member Mark Nogales.
Present.
And I'm here. Commissioner Kayla Powers.
Present.
Commissioner Liliana Rivera.
Present.
Commissioner Bobby Vaughn.
Present.
And Commissioner Andrea Fernandez.
Present.
Mayor Garbarino would like to be here with us today to personally thank everyone. However, because of the Brown Act, it was decided that I will just read his message. Here is his message. Before we begin today, I would like to commend all of you for taking on a work that's larger than all of us. This nation is in a fight with two viruses, COVID-19 and an insidious impact of racial and social injustice. It takes courage and commitment to be willing to take on the complex factors of racial and social equity. While we can all agree that we need change, we most likely will not agree upon how to achieve it. But that's where the courage and commitment come in. From those who have been working to improve South San Francisco for many years, through service on boards and commissions, to the new voices who came to us, such as the Change SFF and our own Youth Advisory Council, our commission will reflect those who hold onto important lessons of the past and those who will lead us progressively into our future. All diverse voices, improving our operating systems. From these meetings, we will experience free expression and a greater understanding on all sides. If we are successful, new structures will more effectively serve the residents of South San Francisco. This is why we are all here, to build something new and to make wrongs right. We are here to take on the task of making systemic change for the citizens and visitors of South San Francisco. Our hearts go out to the cities around the nation that have seen much more despair and heartache than we experience as a smaller city. That's not to say we haven't had issues. Racism is the horrendous underbelly of America. It is practically impossible for any community to have escaped it. Fortunately, we learned quickly in our community. That is why we have pulled together community voices, elected officials, those who work for the city, county, and other service organizations, and citizens, to try as best we can to arrive at productive methodology for positive change. For those of you who are new to the workings of government, We are required to work within the framework of laws and ordinances. It can seem clunky and arduous, but I ask you to stick with it. If we can make change at this level, we have a chance to make it lasting. For those who operate within our systems, I ask that you exercise patience and respect for those who are new to this environment. Our goal is to build a framework without destroying the things that do work successfully. Each agreed upon idea has to be run through the filter of our legal and financial lenses. This is the reality of running a city. But at the same time, I also want us to vet these ideas through our hearts and moral compass. Our goal is to do the right thing, efficiently and effectively. Remember that as neighbors, we all share in the consequences of our process. My hope is that our work will bring about what is best for all of us. Thank you again for agreeing to serve on this commission. It is important work, and I look forward to seeing the progressive ideas coming from your work. That's the message of our mayor, and let's take it to heart. So I would like to first introduce myself.
And Commissioner as a party has joined us.
Oh, hi. My name is Flora Nicholas, and I was voluntold to chair the Mayor's Commission on Racial and Social Equity. I will reiterate my warm welcome to everybody. Good morning. I accepted the responsibility to be one of the council members in this commission because of my heightened awareness of the disparities that exist. 32 years ago, my husband and I brought our 2 young children from the Philippines to South San Francisco, and we are now the proud grandparents of 2 grandchildren. I want to ensure that they will, and all of the children who will be the future of South San Francisco, grow up in a city wherein, according to Martin Luther King Jr. has said, that they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. The brutal deaths of George Floyd and others must stop. By lifting each other up, we will rise. Each of us has been shaped by our own experiences and education. 40 years ago, I marched the streets of the Philippine Financial District to call for an end of the Marcos dictatorship and restoration of our freedoms. I knew very well the fear of being hosed down, tear gas, and real, not rubber bullets, as we faced the Metropolitan Police. I knew how it feels to be a foreigner too, someone who does not look like the majority because I came from the Philippines, someone who speaks with an accent, someone who works 2 jobs to support a family. In this forum, Mark, Jeff, Mike, and I are not the only city leaders. Each of us is a leader of this community. We are all leaders now, a leader in our community, in our respective families, in our respective lives. As leaders, we must own the impact of our words and actions. There will be difficult conversations, but we need to internalize our mission and goals. We must be receptive to change and growth that must begin with each one of us. Let us trust each other and trust ourselves to make sound decisions. I ask everyone to listen and speak openly for us to grow and learn together. As the mayor said, we are doing an important work. Welcome, everyone. And right now, I would like to make an acknowledgement I want all of us to take a moment to acknowledge that the city of South San Francisco is part of the unceded ancestral land of the Romanitas and Muwekma Ohlone people, who trace their ancestry through the Mission Dolores, Mission Santa Clara, and Mission San Jose. We further acknowledge their connection to this region, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and learn on their traditional homeland. I recognize that Indigenous people, including the Ohlones, continue to be a part of our community. Let us take a moment of silence to pay respects to their elders and Ohlone people, past and present. So for our agenda today, there will be a slight change. There will be, right after the break, item 6, community collaboration for children's success, will follow before we go to item 4, the levers of change. The goals for today, this is a quick review of the purpose of the commission, get to know one another, identify hopes for the commission and possible changes, review decision-making process and key terms, review and adopt group agreements, guiding principles and framework, confirm timeline and topics, and hear public comment. I would like to introduce and thank profusely our city staff and consultants who worked diligently to prepare for today. Sharon Reynolds, our Assistant City Manager and Sustainability Officer. Andrea Fernandez, Assistant to the City Manager. Leah Lockhart, our Human Services Director. Marie Patea, who had always gone beyond, over and beyond her administrative duties in the City Manager's office. Lisa Costa-Sanders, our General Plan Administrator. Ashley Krishani, our summer intern. And working hand in hand with them are our consultant team, Attorney and Associates, Kim Dorman, Paige Scusa, Nayeli Bernal, and Eric Jerkovich, and Myra Jolibet from Center for Consulting. Now I will turn it over the meeting to Kim. Kim.
Thank you, Chair Nicholas. Well, it's really quite an honor to be here this morning with all of you. I want to echo Chair Nicholas's welcome and wanted to just say, so my name is Kim Dorman from Ramey & Associates. I'm here with Paige Cruza and Nayeli Bernal, and this work is really critical and important, and we imagine there might be bumps in the road, but we welcome divergent perspectives, and we will today focus on getting to know each other. We have a couple questions we want to ask the commissioners. We will also present some draft group agreements and guiding principles for you to review and perhaps approve. We also want to take a minute to understand all of the work that's happened in South San Francisco to date that we could perhaps build on for this work so that we understand the context and the lay of the land in South San Francisco. We will have a presentation about community collaboration for children's success. And then we'll review the topics that we have proposed in the timeline for our work together. And finally, we want to hear from anyone from the public. We'll be taking notes and then summarizing. all of your comments, but we have a pretty packed agenda, so we'll be moving things along. In order, so we want to also kind of just cover the technology aspect of this. So I'm going to hand it over to Paige to go over some of the basics on how to participate.
Great. So if you're having a hard time hearing, we recommend that you switch from the Zoom platform on your either computer or your mobile device to phone audio. It should be, there's a little caret next to the mute button that you can switch to phone audio, so you're still linked to the platform, so you can continue seeing the slides that are shared in speakers. If you're having a hard time with internet connection, kind of feeling unstable, or the video going in and out, or things just not being well connected, if you're a commissioner, you can turn your video off. People who are not commissioners or moderators already have their videos turned off and will only have their video turned on if they speak for public comment. So we have two different ways of kind of getting comments and questions for the moment. So one is for commissioners, one is for members of the general public. So for commissioners, we're muting everyone, including commissioners, except when they're speaking. When commissioners want to speak, they should virtually raise their hand. That's in the participant tab on the bottom bar, and then in the bottom, raise your hand button. Or if you've called in through the toll-free number, rather than the Zoom platform, you can use *9 on your phone to virtually raise your hand. You can also send a message to the hosts, to the moderators via the chat function. And then for the public will be invited to speak during the public comment period. You'll be muted and have your videos off throughout the meeting. We're very glad that you're able to join us and are excited to have you participate in the public comment session and in future meetings. But we are holding it for public comment, at least for this meeting. You can also send chat messages to the host, so to myself and other moderators, that will summarize at the beginning of the public comment period. If you have longer messages, you can send them to mayorscommission@ssf.net, although we won't be summarizing those because they will not be read until Monday. And then at the beginning of the public comment period, I'll go over the instructions to have the public virtually raise your hands, and one person at a time will be unmuted and invited to speak for up to 2 minutes and then muted again.
So that's a lot of information. I hope that makes sense. You can also chat with Paige just to make sure that all kind of sunk in. I just have to say, I've been doing these kinds of meetings for a long time, and I've never seen so many people in a virtual room at 8:30 in the morning on a Saturday. So I just want to reflect that is quite a commitment on everyone's part here. And I just really appreciate that we're all here today. So we wanted to start by getting to know each other, getting to know the commissioners a little bit. If each commissioner, I think what we'll do is have you raise your participant hand, or Paige, you can call on each person. What we're hoping to do is briefly have you say your name, your affiliation, and also one hope that you have for this commission. We want to kind of think about what we're here to do together, thinking about what we can do together more effectively than we could do on our own. That's sort of how I'm thinking about this work. So with that,
I think we can start with the chair, and then I'll just go alphabetically through the list.
Okay.
Hi, I have said, my name is Flora Nicholas, and first and foremost, I am a mother, a grandmother, in addition to being a wife and a council member. My day job is keeping all patients participating in global clinical trials safe as Senior Director of Global Patient Safety. My hope for today, now that we have the heightened awareness of the racial and social equity around us, I hope that we come up, I just don't hope, I will make sure that we come up with feasible and concrete solutions that will lead to the minimization and hopefully eradication of inequities in our community.
Thank you. Do you want to keep reading, Paige? Oh, Paige, you're muted. Paige, do you want to read the next person? You're still muted.
Commissioner Fernandez?
Is that Andrea, just to be sure?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrea Fernandez. I am a lifelong resident of South San Francisco, born in San Francisco, but raised in South City since I was 2. Attended South San Francisco public schools my whole life, Los Cerritos, Alta Loma, and South San Francisco High School. I went to San Jose State. I have both a bachelor's and a master's from San Jose State in communication studies and Mexican American studies, and a master's in mass communications and journalism. My passion for racial and social equity really comes from my own experiences and my community's experiences around me. And I think coming to the commission was really just a natural kind of instinct for me, because I think it's the first time in a long time that we see civic engagement happening in South San Francisco. And a lot of it has to do with the work that community members have started with, you know, the demonstrations, the walks for Black Lives Matter. And I think it was just a moment for me to really stand up and try to come to the table with our community members. And a goal I have, or a few goals I think for this commission, is one, first and foremost, to really see realistic systemic change amongst our communities, to really develop an approach where we can have multilingual, multi-generational civic engagement across our communities in South San Francisco, and more so to not pretend like we're giving a voice to those who are voiceless, instead really listening to those who are crying out for help, who really need the help, and to kind of get rid of the misconception that our communities don't have voices, because I think our underrepresented communities do have voices, and it's our job, if we have a seat at the table, to really elevate those voices for the sake of a greater good, for not only the issues we see as individuals, but the issues that we see are really underrepresented and underfunded communities crying out that they need that help. So I really hope to see those changes start to work.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Bobby Vaughn. I'll start reading first names in case anyone isn't sure I'm calling on you.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Bobby Vaughn, and I am a professor of anthropology and sociology at Notre Dame Dana-Moore University. And I grew up in South City, and a long time ago now, Ponderosa, Alta Loma, like Andrea, and South City High. And in my academic career, you know, I teach in the areas of race and ethnicity, Latin American studies, gender studies. And I've been at NDNU for 16 years now. And I am excited to sort of reconnect with my hometown around these issues that are very meaningful to me. It's been quite a while since I've lived in South City, but you know, it's a very special place to me and my family. So one of my hopes for the commission, you know, personally, and I think it would help the process, is to really, for me, to get a sense for what the issues are as voiced by those impacted. You know, what are underrepresented communities actually feeling and saying in South City? I don't know the answers to those questions because I'm just re-engaging with South City. So I really am, first off, listening for what are the concrete issues that folk are bringing up and that are unresolved in South City specifically. And as the chair mentioned, you know, I'm interested in concrete solutions, not, you know, simply, you know, giving people an opportunity to voice concerns, but actually addressing those concerns in concrete ways. So I'm very happy to be part of this group expect to learn from a lot of you. And good morning to everyone.
Thank you. Commissioner Cheksa Ibasan, you are on mute, but you're able to take yourself off mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Cheska Torres Ibasan. I am a member of the Youth Advisory Council. I am a public relations manager. I graduated from South San Francisco High School in 2018, and I have lived here in South San Francisco since 2016 when my family immigrated from the Philippines. I am majoring in history and political economy at UC Berkeley. And my biggest hope, in a few words, for this commission is to push forth legislative and systemic changes aimed towards reinvesting in our community, which I believe would be possible through defunding the police. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Edith Arias.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Edith Aries, and I'm very honored to be in this commission. I want to say that being here makes me think more and more as everybody was presenting themselves. There's a lot of things that have been said already. So what I have 3 children that have been raised in South San Francisco schools, Ponderosa, Parkway, South San Francisco High School, and Alta Loma too. And they're now young adults that have been, again, we live here for now 17 years and been very involved in the community in different levels. So one of my hopes to being in this commission is really to, and it's been said already, although there's only 3 people already presented themselves, that just really underrepresented residents and community who their voices, is not that they're silent, because when you do come into those communities, you hear what they need to say. But my hope is that being somehow a bridge between the groups that I support in South San Francisco, who are 2 separate groups, Spanish-speaking support groups for parents and families here in the district and within the community too. So I really hope that through this commission, we're able to have some kind of participatory research where we see and hear and go down into where the needs are and bring it up so that together, we can learn from each other and hear what the needs are. I do have a bachelor's degree in child and adolescent development with a focus on family and school-age children, and a master's in special education. And I'm a teacher in special education in San Francisco Unified School District. I am presently a student candidate for a doctorate in educational leadership. So with that said, education is definitely one of my passions, and hope that we can together again utilize some of that for the racial and social equity in South San Francisco. Thank you.
Commissioner Hermes Monzon, and Commissioner Gladys Balmas, you'll be next. Commissioner Monzon.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Jarvis Monson. I live in Old Town area. I live in South City for about 17 years, and I started getting involved with my community association in my neighborhood about 5 years ago. And since then, I've been active in the neighborhood, and I'm honored to be on this commission. I hope we can achieve certain changes. I personally still positive, thinking that we can collaborate, all of us. And something that I would like to see, hopefully, is that what we say, we totally do. I've been encountering some experiences that we've been asked to have our input and that we are valuable, and our city need our neighborhoods. But I've been having some issues that we don't meet what we said that we're going to do. So I'm willing to learn here, this group, from all of you, how we can actually do what we said that we're going to do. And when we ask for input and concerns, actually write it down and actually take it far. I've been experiencing some disappointments that we raise our voices, we put our inputs, and I don't.
Commissioner Monzon, unfortunately, you are coming in and out. So if you're able to use the chat function, I'm happy to read it. Unfortunately, it's a bit too hard to
Oh,
hear
so
everything.
you couldn't hear what I was talking?
We could hear you at the beginning, but then you became very sporadic, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Well, can you hear me now?
Yes. Do you want to just repeat the last two sentences?
Okay. Good. I'm here to learn from all the commissioners, and what we'd like to see is what we put it on the paper actually goes to action. That's what I'm hoping to see, and I hope the inputs actually goes farther than just put it on a presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gladys Balmas.
Hi, my name is Gladys Balmas. My affiliations are San Mateo County. I work for Aging Adult Services. It's a division from San Mateo County Health. I've been working in racial equity for San Mateo County Health for the last 3 years. We are part of the cohort that has been doing work with the Government Alliance and Racial Equity. My one hope for the commissioner is for us to be able to learn and share the power that we have and have the courage to share that power, to see the community as our equal, to be able to make decisions that impact the community. Thank you.
Jeff, sorry, as a party.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I think you said mayor, which
no, commissioner.
I'm sorry. So I want to first off I want to apologize for this morning. I'm out of state moving my son into the dorms, and then we had a significant call for service that got me a little distracted. So I apologize that I was late trying to get on working the IT component of this. But I just want to say my name is Jeff Azzapardi. I'm the South San Francisco Police Chief. I've been with South City PD for almost 28 years, and I have been the police chief for the last 6. It's been an honor working with this department and, most importantly, serving this community. I have a few hopes for this commission, but the one that I'd like to speak of, we're looking as a police department. I would like to think or hope that all of them are always trying to get better and always trying to find out ways that we can improve and just frankly be better than we have been in the past. And though we think the majority of the time we do a good job, we know that there's room for improvement. And I hope on this commission, like every commissioner group that I'm in, that I can build relationships with people so that it's easier for communication, which is always the case when you have that relationship. And I can listen. My ears are open throughout this whole process. And I may not agree with everything I hear, and everybody might not agree with everything that I say. But I promise you that I'm here to listen, learn, and once again, our ultimate goal here at the PD is to get better and to serve our residents in the best possible way that we can. So thanks for allowing me to have a seat, and I look forward to the process.
Thank you. Commissioner Kayla Powers.
Hello, can you hear my audio?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm Kayla Powers. I'm a resident, the fourth generation in my family to live in South City. The Italian side of my family moved here in the early 1900s, and the Black side moved in the 70s. My day job is management consulting in a range of different industries, and before that, I studied engineering at Stanford. Aside from actually advancing racial and social equity, like a lot of the other commissioners have said, I would hope that we can bring more people from the community into these efforts who traditionally may not have had as much awareness or concern, so that we will just have more people, but also fewer people resisting and fundamentally just changing people's hearts and worldview.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner, let's see, Commissioner Liliana Rivera.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, correct.
Oh, sorry. My name is Liliana Rivera. I'm here on behalf of Change SSF. We are a multi-generational, multicultural coalition of local community members and educators who are hoping to advocate for community empowerment through education and political action. So we've been organizing in South San Francisco since June. We organized a demonstration. We've been organizing public comment and community engagement. We had a roundtable discussion with city council members in regards to defunding the police. And from that roundtable discussion came the idea for this task force. So I guess I would say for me personally, my hope for this task force is just to, like others have said, see real monetary change in the investment that we have in our community, as well as bring forth the voice of the people who are not currently being given a seat at the table.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Mark Nogales.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Mark Nogales. First, let me say thank you to my colleague, Councilwoman Flora Nicholas, for chairing this important committee, and thank you to all the committee members for participating in this important conversation. I've been a South City resident for over 30 years, and since everyone was name dropping their schools, I figure I should do as well. I attended Los Cerritos Elementary School, Alta Loma Middle School, and South San Francisco High School. The one hope that I have for this commission is that we have an open and frank dialogue where we come up with real solutions from the ground up. I don't want what we do to be an empty gesture. I want what we decide as a committee to have real meaning and purpose. So, and I look forward to the conversation and the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mike Futrell. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me? Because it
Yes.
says muted. All right, we're good. Hi, I'm Mike Futrell. I'm the city manager for South San Francisco. I live in South San Francisco with my family, and I've been city manager going on 7 years. My family and I moved from Hawaii, where we were living and working prior to this. I've worked at the federal level in DC, at the state level, and at the local level. I love local government because we hear these voices and we can actually get some change done, which is pretty remote in DC and even in Sacramento these days. As far as background, I've got a law degree from Louisiana State University and a master's in business administration from UMass Amherst. And I'm super impressed as I listen to each of you give your backgrounds and your hopes. And it really bolsters me that this is a really quality commission, and I think we'll get a lot done. My one hope has already been echoed, and that is that we actually come up with concrete change that we can implement and make a real difference in the quality of life of people in South San Francisco. And I hope we can do that by reimagining the delivery of public services and the interconnectedness between healthcare, education, police, everything else. And just, again, reimagine how those all fit together to deliver a more equitable and effective solution. So I look forward to working with each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes. Commissioner, thank you so much, Commissioner Futrell. Commissioner Norm Faria, please.
Good morning. My name is Norm Faria. I have been a resident of the South City for the last 45 years. I've raised 2 daughters in this town. And like you say, I've currently just retired from a job locally here in South San Francisco, See's Candy. So I'm entering a new phase of my life. Getting into where my involvement, I've been a person who's been involved with the city for the last 25 years, whether starting with the Chamber of Commerce. I've been on numerous commissions. Currently, I'm a member of the South San Francisco Planning Commission. Enough about myself. The purpose of this committee, I think it's very critical. It's easy for us in the city to always, or a community, to talk about what we do well. We have to look and address what we're not doing well, so we can address the equities that need to be addressed, look what can be done. And to my fellow commissioners, the one point that I would say is we all have different perspectives. So even though it may be insensitive at the time, I think you must say what's out there, give us your examples, your feelings. So someone like myself who may not know certain issues can be brought to my attention so I can make evaluation of what we need to do and recommend as we go forward. But again, I think we have to, as you say, look at the dirty laundry and see what we can do using that simple analogy. Looking forward to working with you and hopefully someday where we can be face to face so we can personally interact. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Pat Murray. Commissioner Pat Murray. All right, we'll try to come back to her.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
perfect.
Great. Okay. So my name is Pat Murray. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the South San Francisco Unified School District. I too have attended South City Unified School District schools, Westboro Middle School and El Camino High School. I raised 3 children in South San Francisco. All 3 attended South City schools. I'm honored to be here and to be a part of this important work. One of the things that COVID has highlighted is the inequities in our community. And this is the focus of the school district as well at this point. I look forward to listening and learning and helping to bring about meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you. Paige, we can't hear you.
Vanessa McGovern.
Morning, my name is Vanessa McGovern. I am a 8-year resident of South San Francisco. I work for the County of San Mateo currently. I'm a new mother and I'm building my family in South San Francisco, and I am very excited to be on this commission. One hope that I have is that, of course, we can implement concrete, actionable, positive changes within South San Francisco, and we can take other people's ideas and turn those into actions that have been implemented and can bring, just lead to a better South San Francisco. I hope the commission's work and conversation also brings light to inequities and inspires future conversations people have and influences others within our community to consider racial and social equity in all their decisions and interactions. So I'm hoping this conversation builds a bigger conversation and helps people continue with our work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That is all
Thank
the
you.
commissioners. So, Kim.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I think, yeah, I just want to take in what everyone has said. We have important work to do together. And I think just to summarize some of the things that we heard in terms of, it sounds like there's a lot of folks that are in agreement about concrete actionable change that really does address the systemic inequities that are pervasive. And we will be working really closely and hard with you to make that happen. So a number of you also mentioned that this work is going to be challenging, perhaps, and we're anticipating that. One of the things that we also wanted to ask you was if you could just think of one challenge or concern that you have, maybe just briefly say that, and we will add it to our kind of chart here. We want to be able to capture both the hopes and anticipate some challenges as we begin this work and these important conversations. So Paige, I guess, do you want to do the hands?
Do we want to just go through, and if people want to pass, they can?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. So Chair Nicholas, would you like to start again?
Sure. My concern is, of course, prioritization because we have only finite resources. And I find it challenging to come up with a result or deliver the report and have this concrete assessment of that concrete actionable decision by July 21st, because it takes really some time before we can get to this. But we will work through, power through it.
Great. Okay. Commissioner Andrea Fernandez.
I think one challenge that I kind of foresee is just how do we leverage, you know, ensuring that we're working within what's legal and what I guess is permitted within the city's framework, but without dismissing the disparities in the truth and the need for the work to be done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bobby Vaughn.
So I guess one of the things that I would reflect on right now is I would hope that the commission, that our work can be creative enough. So I'm a little concerned from some of the comments that I'm hearing is, you know, resources are important, but pouring more resources into a racist system isn't going to fundamentally change the racist system. So, you know, I would hope that our conversations can be around how do we change how we do things in an anti-racist way, rather than, you know, a conversation primarily about allocation of resources, because that, you know, buttresses the racist system and structure. So I would hope that we can get beyond a question of resources and actually look at some of the systemic issues that can be changed, which isn't simply adding to the line item in a pre-existing budget.
Thank you. Commissioner Cheska Ibasan.
I just wanted to second what Commissioner Bobby Vaughn has mentioned. My concern is fueling money into a racist system. I know we are talking about enhancing the resources that we have for our communities, but say, for example, we are increasing jobs and other opportunities here in the city, like mental health services. Who will be working at those jobs? Who will be partaking these positions in our community? Most likely they will probably be coming from already affluent neighborhoods. So I would like to see community participation and for the city to actually look at our residents, not just like provide opportunities and just they can whoever applies, something like that, because that's something I've been constantly seeing around the city, wherein it's predominantly being ran by people who don't even live here, who don't even resonate with what the community needs, or someone who just don't understand the living situation of South San Francisco.
Thank you. Commissioner Edith Aries.
I think I feel like both commissioners have just said some of my notes that I was going to say, but definitely my concerns is the bias, the assumptions, and the lived experiences of us as commissioners in making decisions or bringing up ideas, because I think there can be barriers to understand really situations of how we're really going to get to the racial and social equity.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Gladys Balmas. Or Commissioner Hermes. Yes, there you go.
I'm sorry. So for me, I think what is very challenging when you bring so many different perspectives is to find common ground that you can work from. So I think if we can do that, we can build, but that's we're going to have to all let go of some of the assumptions that we have to be able to build a framework that we can all agree on. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Monson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I hope we're gonna propose, suggest on our experiences what could be done to improve our relationships among the communities and different racial groups, and build from that, right? I'm open to listen to everybody's suggestions, and hopefully they can do the same thing when I, suggest something. I think this is a good opportunity, and like I said at the beginning, I hope this one gets on ink, but also gets on any actual changes. That's all I'm going to be focused on. Suggest we can sort it out and actually make the changes. Like I said earlier, kind of been disappointed in a few instances in my experience that we've been asked for inputs, suggestions, but actually that's not going nowhere. And I would like to see the changes happening. If not, it's not encouraging. And I hope when we finish this commission, we get encouraged, not discouraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Azzopardi.
I think it's been mentioned a few times, but my concern is we're obviously here because we have some serious societal issues, and they've been around for a long time and really came to light with the George Floyd tragedy. What I'm hoping is part of our goals is to work on the police aspect of our societal problems, but that's just not the sole focus. I think we all know it's bigger than that. So though we do need to focus a part of our efforts on police relations, we also need to look at our society, our city as a whole, and make sure that we work on those issues as well.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Kayla Powers.
Be challenging is our tendency as society to anchor on how things are today or how things were 50 years ago and say if we improve from that, that's good enough. But I think those are concessions. What we really need to do is like start from how should things be? What's the right answer and work back from there. But that's really challenging.
Thank you. Commissioner Rivera.
Yeah, I think a concern that I have is that something that I've heard echoed a lot is that we don't really have a race problem in South San Francisco, or that it's not as bad as like say Minneapolis. I don't think that's true, and I think that we need to let go of that idea. As we acknowledged earlier, we are on stolen land. In the 1950s, there were several parts of South San Francisco that were white only. And in 2012, a South San Francisco police officer killed a Black 15-year-old named Derek Gaines. So we're not exempt from the problems that exist everywhere else in America. And I think we need to let go of that idea.
Thank you. Commissioner Nicholas.
Thank you. I'm going to echo a lot of the comments here in terms of a lot of the things already said. As I mentioned earlier, I don't want this to be an empty gesture, that I really want this committee to have real meaning and purpose. And I think in terms of the challenges, I think is how do we get to coming up with real solutions? Because all of us have different ideas. And so it'll be kind of interesting to kind of see how we get to positive results of change, because I think all of us bring different perspectives and different experiences. So, that's one thing that I'm kind of looking at in terms of trying to get something resolved.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Futrell.
All right, lots of great comments already, but I'll kind of echo what Councilmember Nogales just said. In addition to what's already been noted, the challenge will be us, this group, coming together as an effective team that respects each other. If we do our jobs right, we'll be able to have difficult, uncomfortable, even disturbing conversations without judgment, and bring these issues and put them on the table. And work through them as a team, and then get past that to meaningful change. So I agree with the comments that have been said before, but I hope that through exercises like this, we get to know each other enough that we can have those really tough conversations. And again, keep working together nevertheless, and come up with a better solution than what we currently have.
Thank you. Commissioner Faria.
Yes, I like the Commissioner Futrell said and others, I do agree there's been a lot of excellent comments made, like Commissioner Vaughn regarding not to focus just on resources, or Commissioner Balmas, or I'm mispronouncing about Paulette, the assumptions, like Commissioner as a party said, we just can't focus on one area. There's a lot that's going on. I think on a personal note, I think that we have to look at stuff that, yes, there are biases out there. I think we have to evaluate that we have the open-mindedness not to have our presumptions, assumptions, and all the things that we perceive, that we look at it and, again, be open-minded, and also what we can really make an impact on. Because as you say, diverting back to the resources, There's a lot of things that are mandated by state, federal, and county that we'll have no control over. So I think we really have to make sure that we look under every rock, but make sure to address what we can, and then on a personal note, evaluate our own biases, that we can be open-minded enough to really look at it and listen to what others say on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Murray? Oh, I think you just hit mute again.
Okay, thank you. I believe that it'll be easier to make superficial change, putting bandages on the problems, but I think the challenge will be to look deeper at our systems to make meaningful, long-lasting change. So that's where I feel the challenge is.
Thank you. Commissioner McGovern.
Okay, well, going last, a lot of everything I've thought of has been echoed multiple times. I definitely agree. One of my concerns is that we balance our focus on easily obtainable changes, the low-hanging fruit, which I hope we can come up with some good solutions that can be implemented quickly, but also that we set up a system that will create long-term goals and changes that will be followed through to completion and will be continued forward. I think the most challenging thing one of the most challenging things that we have for this commission is that we're gonna have to navigate sensitivities and difficult conversations, and that we're really gonna be challenged to listen to each other and to be open to ideas that differ from our own, so that we can work together. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think that is all of the commissioners. If I missed anyone, please raise your hand, but I believe we just went through the list of everyone. Kim, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. Just listening to the range of comments, I actually really appreciate people's willingness to kind of come forward out on the, we're at 9:30 on a Saturday morning already, and sort of naming what I do think is going to be challenging work. I am hopeful that we will be able to listen to what's really underneath some of the conversations that we're going to have in order to get specific and realistic, while also I like the idea of being really creative and reimagining. I think someone said how it should be. And so we're going to look for that balance. And I also think that looking for shorter term possible wins that we would agree on, as well as longer term, more deeply embedded changes that are going to obviously take a little while. I think both of those actions will be important for this work to be effective. So I guess as a facilitator of this process, I commit to really listening and reflecting back what we hear in the range of conversations through our time together, and also just want to invite you to speak here, but also if I think a number of the commissioners have been open to conversations that we'll have with you outside of these meetings to get to know you even better. I know this is limited time together, and we do have a lot to do today, and we will in every meeting. So just kind of inviting an open door communication lines with us as facilitators. So Kim Dorman, Paige Cruza, and Nayeli Bernal. And we will, I guess with the work that we're going to be laying out now, which is the foundation of how we could work together, wanting to come to agreement on how we're going to work together and some of the principles that might guide our work as we work together. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Paige to walk us through the group agreements and principles.
Thank you, Kim. So first, we're just going to quickly, and I know this is kind of the theme of this meeting, is going quickly through a lot of things. So this is just something you're gonna have to be used to right now. Key definitions. So commissioners were emailed some key definitions. They may not be perfect. There's always edits that can be made, but that we're hoping will be useful to help the commission have shared language. We'll be sharing those definitions with the public afterwards. One thing we just want to, I think many people have already noted this in their comments, but recognizing that if we treat people equally, it doesn't actually get to the results that we want, because there are already systemic biases and structural racism, and also people have lots of opportunities that are unevenly distributed. So thinking about those opportunities and also barriers that are just unfairly distributed, we want to make sure that we are thinking about how to address those thoughtfully, and clearly the commissioners are very excited and ready to do that. For racial and social equity, which is clearly the focus of this commission, I know one of the commissioners earlier already said that everyone has a voice. So yes, one of the goals of racial and social equity is really lifting up the voices that are often not heard or included in decision making, recognizing that everyone does have a perspective that's valuable. It's just not always heard by people at decision making tables or participating in decision making tables. So that is part of the process. We want people to be meaningfully involved. And then as an outcome, which is really what we're striving for, and which many commissioners spoke to as well, is we want to get to a world and a South San Francisco where race can no longer be used to determine, or to predict rather, life outcomes. And really that will improve outcomes for all racial groups and fair outcomes for all populations. So using the Americans with Disability Act, which just had its 30th anniversary, as an example, curb cuts that have been mandated through the ADA to allow folks with wheelchairs to have better access to sidewalks and such have also been very helpful for folks with strollers, pedestrians who are using carts to bring laundry or groceries home, and many other people that it was not targeted to, but that have been able to benefit. And we really believe that many of the improvements to address racial equity or inequities will really ultimately impact the broader society in positive ways as well. And then, so racism, we are operating with the understanding that racism has multiple levels. So structural racism and institutional racism has been getting more attention in the public realm recently, which is important. For a long time, it focused a lot on individual racism around things like the KKK or white supremacy, and that is important to address and to acknowledge and to change. And the commission's work is really focused on addressing institutional racism and some structural racism. And then when individual racism plays into those things, we may be addressing that as well. But the focus is really that some policies, practices, and procedures in institutions, so that might be departments, schools, hospitals, ultimately end up working better for white people than for people of color, regardless of if that's intentional or not. So in about 50, 60 years ago, redlining, which people are basically meant that only white people could get loans to buy homes in certain areas, and only white people were allowed to live in certain areas, and people of color were segregated to other areas. That was a very intentional, explicit federal policy that was then implemented with banks to create different outcomes for white people and people of color. A less intentional but equally impactful policy in just with COVID that's come up is who is triaged, or how people in hospitals are triaged to ICU. And so while the hospitals are not supposed to discriminate based on race, because there are these structural inequities, and people of color have much higher rates of chronic disease like diabetes and asthma, that ends up impacting the hospital's decisions around who gets triage as being more likely to survive. And that compounds the fact that communities of color are also more likely to be working low wage, minimum wage essential jobs, and are therefore contracting the disease at higher rates. I know that's a lot. Okay. And we'll go back to the group agreements and the and the the guiding principles in a moment, but first timeline and press. So Kim.
Okay, so that's a lot of information. Maybe just take a deep breath. We're trying to really build the foundation of our work together, and part of that is key terms, part of that is understanding the time limitations and kind of the timeline of the project, which I'll go over in a minute, and then we're going to go to the group agreements and principles. But that I think the intent behind going through in some depth the key definitions is to really put forward, you know, at 9:45 on our first meeting, some of the ways, the frameworks, the thinking that we'll be bringing into this project. And so that's the rationale for that. So I think many of you know from the charter, this project is laid out in 3 phases. So the first phase is what we're in now. We're in the process of working with you to identify key information that sets the context so that we all are working with kind of shared understandings of the specific context in SSF, and hearing and listening closely to community concerns, and then also looking broadly at best practices, perhaps locally, but also nationally. Phase 2, we're going to be thinking about specific recommendations, and that process will go through kind of a vetting where we get in touch with key stakeholders to make sure that the recommendations really are what you're saying, realistic, but also will create meaningful change. And I think that's going to take some time to figure out what we all agree on. And then finally, in the final phase, we'll finalize the recommendations and develop implementation plans. So one of the things that we felt like was important as well for today is to be explicit about how decisions are being made in this process together. So on the left, you see each of the key decisions that will be made throughout this project, throughout our time together, this commission. Starting with the selection of commissioners, then you see in the middle column who provided input on developing the list of commissioners, all of the folks that are here, and then the final approval, the mayor and designated appointing entities. So I won't go through all of this, but I think it's important in terms of transparency to be clear when we're gathering input and who has the final approval. And so for most of these, as you can see with the middle, the commission will have input on all of the key decisions throughout the project. And the final approval in many cases is also the commissioners, the group of commissioners. So also we wanted to just set up the approval process. So that's what this slide is about. What we're showing here is some of what was in the charter. So this is, again, the nuts and bolts of how we're going to work together. We will be setting up agendas so that it's clear when we're going to potentially approve or ask the commission to approve. Votes can only take place, however, when a quorum of commissioners are present. So that's 8 of the 14 of you. And also, I guess one of the things that I want to emphasize is that we will be striving for consensus, which means that we really want to work towards a set of documents that that the commission either strongly supports, you love it, or you can live with it. And so it's essentially like a thumbs up or a thumbs sideways is the one way that we think about it. But if you can live with it, then we're going to ask you to approve it. And so if a majority of commissioners who are present vote to approve, then it's approved. And if half or fewer of the commissioners in attendance vote to approve, then it won't be approved at that time, and we'll take it back and we'll gather more information and have future conversations. So we're going to be approving, we're going to ask you to approve in a little bit. So we'll review this again, but that's the approach that we're going to be taking. Okay, back to you, Paige.
Okay, great, thank you. So group agreements are, these are our proposed group agreements. So we're excited to hear commissioners' response to them and find out if there's any modifications or additions. But the ones that we're proposing is to focus on our common goal, be open to new ideas and perspectives, build and strengthen partnerships and community relationships, and participate and be self-aware. And the idea behind the group agreements in general is they are the guide for how commissioners interact with one another during meetings and outside of meetings, and really serve as a guide for basically the behavior, I guess, of the commission, commission members. The guiding principles that I'll be going over next after we finish the group agreements are really intended to be what we use as our guide for the recommendations and the development of the recommendations that the commission has been charged with creating. But this is really about how we act with each other. Chair Nicholas, did you want to say anything?
I'm on mute. Okay, I muted myself. No, like what we have said, everybody should keep an open mind. Everybody should speak freely, but then at the same time be mindful that we should own our actions and our words. So every time you speak, make sure that you are speaking as a leader, because it's just not us. Everyone, each one of us, even the people who are not in this commission, you are leaders of this community.
Thank you.
And Paige, can I just add one thing? We have a handout that we attached to the agenda, and I think all the commissioners will have access to that, and I think it was in our packet. With what I just want to reflect back to you is that there's a lot of text here. We're not going to go all over this now, but many of the main themes that you all brought up in your either goals or concerns are reflected here. I think as I was looking through this after I was hearing you talk, I think that there's a lot here that captures what we heard already from this group. So as Paige was saying, these are the group agreements, and I think, Paige, you're going to go over the principles next.
We'll be adopting these first, actually.
Okay, yeah.
So before we go into the adoption, we'd like to get the commissioners' responses, if how other commissioners feel about this, and if there's anything that you feel like is really missing or should be considered as an additional group agreement. So if any commissioners want to say anything, please just raise your hand virtually. And if you have nothing to add, if you could maybe just use the chat function to say that, so we make sure we're not just having technical issues that we're missing people's comments. Commissioner Nogales?
No, I think this is good. I just want to reiterate that, there'll be times where it will be an uncomfortable conversation, but I think we need to have those uncomfortable conversations and be open and real about what we're saying. And I think we're all going to be respectful to each other in regards to our opinions and comments. And so I think this is a good framework to start with.
Thank you. Okay, a few commissioners have mentioned that they're good and nothing to add. Anyone else? I know it's a lot to absorb, so I'm going to give people a little bit more silence.
Okay.
Great. All right, so let me get back to. All right, so the first commission vote, we're going to not vote quite yet. We're just going to go over the voting process, and then we'll actually have the first commission vote of 3 of this meeting. So the idea, as Kim mentioned before, is really, do you love them, which is what we're hoping for, or can you live with them? And it seems like
So thumbs up or thumbs sideways.
And so, right, so that's our approval criteria is, do you love them or can you live with them? If you object to anything, you shouldn't approve them, right? You're going to reject them. And if less than half or less of the people, commissioners who are present, reject them, then they will not be approved, and they'll be either reworked or just not revisited. So for voting on Zoom, make sure that you, for commissioners, click on the participants icon in the bottom of the middle of the control bar, and you should be able to see the participants tab on the right sidebar. And much like the exact same way that you were raising your hands to speak, use the raise hands function to approve. Basically, it's our little online version of like saying aye. And if you don't approve, leave it down. So if we have half, if there's not more than half who approve, we will confirm that people who have not raised their hands really are intending to not raise their hands, and are not just doing, again, because of technology, but that is our
Paige, a lot of people are raising their hand. Do you see that?
Yes, I am opening that back up because unfortunately my monitor is not large enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so we have 9 affirmative. Any other commissioners? 10, 11, 13. All right, great. And anyone that we're missing? 2 more commissioners. Just waiting for them to see if they want to weigh in. Okay.
And part of what we're doing, just to make sure everybody knows, is that we're taking screenshots of all of the visuals so that we can back up if someone has a question, that we can actually say, yes, there were this number of people that approved these things. So we're behind the scenes doing quite a lot here, which is the pause.
Great. All right, and yes, I think there's just one commissioner who has not explicitly approved, although I believe that may be because he's not actually able to right now with technology. So let me just quickly grab this.
So Paige, if I hear what you're saying correctly, it looks like 13 of 14. Is that right? Or 12? What's the final number?
13 of 14. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So that's the first one.
Great. All right. And then one more thing about group agreements is really echoes what Chair Nicholas and a number of the other commissioners have said already. But we know that that none of us is perfect. All of us are continually learning and growing. And these are going to be some difficult conversations with people coming from a lot of different perspectives, and having understandably strong opinions and ones that are maybe in conflict. And it's important to hear one another and have those conversations. So calling in, we're really encouraging, some people might use the phrase calling out. So we're really encouraging people to call others in by focusing on the behavior. So if you specifically feel like someone else in the commission has said something that's offensive or insensitive, that you think that they should reconsider or that you'd like them to reconsider, we encourage you to gently call them in. Likely this will happen outside of commission meetings just because we have such limited time in meetings. But we really want to encourage this to happen to make sure that there is trust built and that there's clear communication and we're not holding things and not actually communicating effectively. So by calling in, we really want folks to focus on the behavior. It's not about the individual. and being as specific as possible, instead of, as much as possible, avoiding not assuming what you think that they meant, really asking them maybe what they meant. If you feel like it was something that was offensive, explaining to them very clearly that why you felt like it was offensive, if you can. And the other side of that is really that if someone is providing that feedback to you, we want to really take the time to reflect that, and that goes for the moderators and city staff as well, not just commissioners, so that it can be easy, especially in public spaces, sometimes to feel defensive or like, oh, I didn't mean that, or that's, you misunderstood me. And we really want to take some time when people are inviting us to think about what we've said or how we've behaved, to really hear what they're saying and consider it. And maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. But we do want to make sure we take that opportunity to try to learn and grow together.
Thank you, Paige.
Okay, on to the guiding principles. Great. So, guiding principles that we are proposing, again, these are really what we're intending to use to set up the recommendations that we'll be developing through the commission, and directing that, and then also in preparation for the recommendations, really guiding the content and the material that'll be covered in the phase 1 meetings, which we'll be going over after the break. That'll prepare us for those recommendations and then implementation plans. So recognizing systemic racism and social inequities may seem very obvious because it is what the commission is about, but we do want to really make sure that we stay very focused on systemic, institutional, structural racism and inequities, to make sure that we're not kind of getting into small reforms or things that are not as meaningful. We want to support learning and innovation, clearly very similar to wanting to be open to new ideas as we interact with one another, but we do want to, part of the phase 1 meetings will really be about learning from different cities and different experts, what are ideas that are happening, that are being tried, that are being effective, or that are just being experimented with, that are things that the city can consider doing or recommending, and the commission may consider whether or not it's a good fit for the city. We want to promote transparency. These are open meetings. I know that there's, we're not allowing folks that are not commissioners to speak right now, but we really are excited to hear public comment at the end. And depending upon, and we will likely allow more public comment throughout meetings in the future. Again, so much to cover. And then we want to focus on action and systems change. Many commissioners already spoke to this. So I think that that's pretty clearly something that people are committed to, but really wanting to make sure that the recommendations are feasible and that they're meaningful. And we're going to vote again on these in a moment. Let me just pull up very quickly the handout that we had sent to commissioners that'll be made publicly available afterwards, similar to the group agreements, with a lot more information on the kind of what the principles look like or mean, and they also include the portions of the charter for the commission that are most relevant.
And maybe now is a good time to put down your hands. If you're a commissioner, you've raised your hand.
Everyone down.
Claire. Thank you.
Sorry.
Perfect.
Yes. Sorry, I just have not had a chance to do that. I am going to lower all hands. Okay, so everyone's hands are down for the moment. And again, we know we're not expecting everyone to take these in, but at the moment, I mean, take these in immediately because it's a lot. But I'll give you a minute to just look at that. And if commissioners have any responses, additions, changes, questions, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah, and I'll just say I just got a question, and I think it's an important one in terms of the possibility of bringing in data. We're going to be a little bit later today. We'll be listening to an overview of some of the information we have about SSF through the Community Collaboration for Children's Success work, and we'll bring folks up to date on that. But we'll also be asking you as commissioners to help us identify data, information, and best practices. And part of that will happen today, but likely we won't have enough time to cover everything, so we'll follow up with you after that. So we are looking for your best thinking on these various topics.
And similar, or just like we did with the group agreements, if you don't have anything to add or any questions, please just chat that so we confirm. Okay, Commissioner Murray. There we go. Okay.
Hi. No, I think they're very thorough, and I appreciate the work that went into developing them. And I was raising my hand to say I think these are great.
Great. Chair Nicholas?
Oh, no, I raised my hand just to vote.
Oh,
I thought
sorry.
we were voting.
We're not there yet. We're almost there. Just getting
No.
feedback first.
I'm just thinking about our timeline. So, just.
We're getting, yes. Anyone else who wants to comment?
Okay, I'm good comments. So Paige, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, great. Okay, so let me just make sure everyone's hands are great. So everyone's hands are down, so raise your hand if you approve. Perfect. Great. And again, we have everyone has approved except for one person who I believe is having some tech issues. So I will just screenshot that, but that's 2 votes down.
Congratulations, everybody. We have group agreements and guiding principles.
And there's a question from one of the public members of the public about which of the commissioners voted yes, no, or did not vote. So for both of those, the only commissioner who did not vote was Commissioner Hermes Monzon. And I know that he had to switch to phone only, so I think that that's potentially why he didn't. So he either abstained or did not approve, and we'll follow up with him to clarify. But regardless, everyone else approved. Okay. And now we have a very, very brief 5-minute break. Kim, do you want to say anything?
Okay, everybody. So we'll just maybe restart the clock so that we have a full 5 minutes. And we will look forward to seeing you back at 10:10. 6 minutes, technically. just as a practice, can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, we can
Just wanna
hear
make
you.
Okay, so are we all stretched and did everyone have a chance to get a drink? Can you hear me all right? Great, okay.
An update is that the one person who is the commissioner who had not clearly voted to approve reached out and said that that they do approve. So both votes are unanimous.
Okay, and Paige, just to let you know, we can't really hear you very well. So
is that any better? No.
Oh, I heard that is that the last
Both votes were unanimous. The person who had not clearly voted reached out and said that they supported. Kim, your sound, I think, may have cut out. Okay, so Kim is troubleshooting tech stuff for a moment, and we are excited to have Shireen Malakfazali with us from the County of San Mateo to share a little bit of information about the Community Collaboration for Children's Success.
Good morning, Chair Nicholas, all commissioners, staff, Kim, Paige, and members of the public. My name is Shireen Malakfazali. I work at County Health and manage the Health Policy and Planning Program, Get Healthy San Mateo County Collaborative, and the Community Collaboration for Children's Success Initiative, which I'm here to share more with you about this morning. It's great to be with you today. Community Collaboration for Children's Success, and it's a mouthful, so I'm going to use it, CCCS for short, is a multi-agency collaborative with County Health, including our Youth Mental Health Substance Abuse Program, Juvenile Probation, County Office of Education, and First Five. The goal for CCCS is really to improve outcomes for children and youth in the county. We want all children and youth in our community to be supported, have opportunities for success, and grow up healthy and supported. And to do this, CCCS focused on young people who had experienced trauma, who are at high risk of, quote, falling through the cracks. The CCCS framework brought in a trauma-informed approach and a racial equity lens. And the process for planning, we developed action plans that were supported by both data and community member expertise. We knew that every community is different in our county, and it made it important to really hear from community members to identify which strategies were most impactful in their communities rather than taking a one-size-fits-all approach. In South San Francisco, we closed the planning process in 2019 and began implementation a few months later, which we'll talk about later. Looking at the slide for the 4 communities, if you could just back up one slide. We wanted to look at, across the county, we wanted to look at where were youth needs highest, but also where youth assets were highest. And that's where we wanted to start with our planning process. So we looked at data on where youth in our high intensity programs like juvenile justice, probation, youth mental health substance abuse programs, and child maltreatment allegations were coming from across the county. Then we added some risk factors for children and youth, like low birth weight or 3rd grade reading proficiency, suspension rates, and poverty. And that's how we identified highest need. And then we looked at assets like youth serving organizations, collaborations like the Big Lift, or existing community-based organizations and facilities. We pulled them all together to identify where needs were highest and where assets were highest. And it's a little bit difficult to see on the map that you're looking at, but the purple, where you see purple on the map on your left is where those high needs and high assets came together. We wanted to highlight for you that at our Get Healthy San Mateo County website, you can dig really deep into all of the data. We have interactive maps available on each of those indicators I mentioned that you can look at close up and at the census level, if not lower. The 4 communities that were identified as highest need and highest assets were South San Francisco, North Fair Oaks, Redwood City, and East Palo Alto, and Daly City. Next slide. Just looking a little bit more closely at South San Francisco so you could see where the purple parts, the high need, high assets were identified. But you can also see the red around it. That's the smaller map on your left. The red signifies all the high need areas that were identified, which encompass much of South San Francisco. And then the purple parts show the overlay of the high assets. So you can see that the vast majority of South San Francisco, or a good portion of it, was identified. And the data that you see shows the dramatic overrepresentation of South San Francisco youth in our juvenile probation, with 15% of our clients being from South San Francisco and 9% of our mental health substance abuse youth clients coming from South San Francisco, whereas only about 8% of the children and youth across the county live in the South San Francisco. In South San Francisco, we had a neighborhood leadership group with about 65 local leaders engaged, and heard from more than 230 impacted parents and youth about the existing community strengths and resources in their community, about key issues that get in the way of youth in South San Francisco being happy, healthy, and successful. And then also asked specifically for their expertise on what strategies they think would best overcome those challenges. And you can see the dark and light blue boxes on your slide show some of the strengths that were identified in the qualities of parents, caregivers, and youth. And you'll see respect, sacrifice, and love of parents identified, the creativity, engagement, and friendliness of the South San Francisco youth lifted up. And more broadly, when we talked about assets, certainly lots of other physical and other attributes came up. Specifically, Orange Park was one of the high ones highlighted. And as South San Francisco community members work through the understanding of the high needs that were identified by the 230 folks that voiced their needs and priorities, they prioritized the strategies they felt would address those issues the best and leverage existing resources. Next slide. So this is a lot to look at, but again, I want to make sure that you are able to access the links to the actual action plan. I would love for you to take a look at all the depth of the data and the strategies that were identified in the time that you have. I put them in the chat box to the IT moderators, so if they're able to share it more broadly with all the participants, that would make it an easy way to share it out, but we're happy to follow up with that information. Lots of strategies were identified by the group. As you can imagine, with a lot of voices at the table, we went through a really diligent prioritization process, and I want to lift up the fact that Paige and Kim were integral in this work. They were consultants to us in this process, so there's really good integration there with this work, especially with the overlap of priorities around racial equity. So lots of work, diligent prioritization process by the neighborhood leadership group to identify the 13 strategies that you see here on your screen and in the action plan that specifically are about moving forward children's and youth success and also reducing inequities. I won't go through reading all of them. I really do hope that you'll have a chance to look at the data and the action plan, but did want to highlight a few places that really priorities overlap and align with some of the commission charter issues that were identified. I know health is a concern of yours, and certainly access to mental health and substance use services were identified as top priorities. Education, preschool access, having a strong school climate, having non-punitive disciplinary policies that really engaged and connected youth, ensuring social emotional curriculum and programming, school-based services. Lots of other social services were identified, supports for children at risk for homelessness, after school, summer, weekend enrichment programs, employment opportunities, and family income were one of the top issues actually across all 4 of our communities, unsurprising to most of you. And then for our next slide, I wanted to highlight some of the work that went to implementing some of those action plans. So for one, I want to just say that we had envisioned and planned, prior to planning, we had been in conversation with leadership around a potential of a $2.5 million investment, sizable investment in the implementation of the action plans across the 4 communities, but ultimately weren't able to get the funds allocated, unfortunately. So we had to really pivot in our implementation strategy and be scrappy. And we wrote a lot of grants, but we also started to develop implementation work groups. Specifically in South San Francisco, we did that to engage the leaders from the neighborhood leadership group. And we're able to identify some county health staff resources that we could allocate to support the work group in prioritizing implementation actions. And some of you, I think, participated on that. I know at least 1 or 2 of you did. And then Trish Irwin from the Family Health Division of County Health, who's really amazing. She was the resource that really helped bring that implementation group together. 3 subcommittees were initially developed in the implementation planning process to focus on. There was one focused on restorative justice, restorative practices to keep kids in school and move away from punitive disciplinary policies. But that was dissolved early on because the school district actually shared that they had existing efforts already underway around this topic that they plan to move forward. So the 2 focused work groups were around parent-family engagement and foundational training. For the parent-family engagement, South San Francisco leaders worked with our behavioral health recovery services to bring a health ambassador program in January to South San Francisco with about 15 or so parents engaged in a capacity building leadership development program. And your Commissioner Edith Aries is a health ambassador and can certainly share more about that. For the foundational training series, we were focused on youth-facing providers and how to support youth-facing providers to bring a trauma-informed approach and as a resiliency approach to the youth they served. And they identified 4 topics for the capacity building with 2 cohorts going through those 4 priority trainings. And we had started the trainings and had Trauma 101 training, which was very successful, and heard really great stories about how that impacted providers. But unfortunately, that we only started that in January, and by March, COVID had hit, and we were kind of behind the 8 ball and trying to do anything. So we both paused the health ambassador and the training program at this point. But we continue to, we have been providing, we continue to meet with some of the CCCS partners and send a lot of information since COVID, especially since the needs in our communities, especially the communities CCCS focused on, which is high impacted communities, where we send resources, all the new resources on housing and testing and financial assistance out on a regular basis. We also did hold a training on trauma-informed leadership during times of crisis, and have a second training coming up on August 24th that I'd be happy to share with any of you if you're interested in that. An organization called Trauma Transformed brought that training to us. We also have a 4 community subcommittees specifically focused on racial justice action that started meeting in July, with priorities on racial justice identified in June. And we are just continuing to send out information, look for resources where possible, but are really excited about this commission coming together and seeing where you all land on your priorities and implementation interests, and how we can be successful in supporting you. And that's I think the time I have right now, and would love to see if Paige and Kim, if there's time to take any questions or perfect.
Yeah, thank you for asking, and thanks so much, Shireen, for your overview. There are a couple questions. I think we have a few minutes, so I believe Commissioner Kayla Powers had a question. If you go ahead and unmute. Here. I think you're good, Kayla.
Okay. How are you thinking about tracking how successful these initiatives are? Like, are there certain metrics that you're using to kind of see if they're successful? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. We through the planning process, we certainly did a lot. We had an evaluation support from South San Francisco State University. For the implementation process, the 2 efforts underway in South San Francisco, both the Health Ambassadors Program and the foundational trainings, did start with kind of a pre-survey that was then to culminate in a post-survey, but we just have not yet gotten to the post because we just have this new COVID reality. But that was our monitoring process then. We also, in the plan for the overarching priorities that were identified in the action plan, there are specific outcomes identified. So larger outcome and indicators can be monitored for the action plan itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it looks like another commissioner, Andrea, did you have a quick question?
Yeah, just do you mind going into a little bit more detail around, I know you briefly mentioned the implementation of restorative justice practices. If you don't mind just sharing a little bit more about what's being implemented with restorative justice.
Yeah, I'm probably, as far as I know, we've had an initiative under Get Health San Mateo County around restorative practices and restorative justice for about 5 years now. But I'm not the best person to talk about what specifically is happening in South San Francisco's district, but I can tell you what was shared with us at the time, where the committee was dissolved, was that they were taking a 2-year strategy, and the first year was to really learn about what their schools within their districts were already doing around discipline, and one of the school district members that was engaged was going school to school and understanding what kinds of, if they had detention and how they thought about their process and what was working and what wasn't working, and was aggregating that information to culminate in an understanding of how disjointed a lot of the processes were across the schools, and really moving to a place where I think what we heard was a hope to move to a restorative justice practices effort where kids are not taken out, or it's not a punitive system where kids are taken out of the classroom or detention or suspended, but are really, you know, to your ground rules, are called in. And called in by those that might be the victims in an infraction, so that victim can feel accountability and empowerment, and the person can understand and share where they were coming from and what could have happened, and what led them to the infraction or issue itself, so that we are treating kids and youth like they, you know, like real human beings that have challenges and might make a mistake, not sort of putting them aside. Did that answer your question?
Thank you so much. I have another question from Commissioner Murray.
Oh, it's not a question. For the last few years, we've had something called Alternative to Expulsion, where we teach the kids rather than expel them initially. But we recently, right before COVID, started an alternative to suspension program, wherein we keep them in school. They're not suspended. They don't go off to home or wherever they go during the day. We keep them on campus, and it's more of a teaching approach as opposed to a punitive approach. We also focus on the mental health of the student as well, so that we help them in a myriad of ways. So that's what we're doing right now. With COVID, they're at home, so.
Are there parents' issues around discipline now? But thank you, Commissioner Murray, that was really helpful.
I think there might be more questions. And so I don't know if there's a burning question right now. We wanted to keep going with the rest of our agenda for today. And a couple things that I heard via chat was related to the research that we did for SSF, and the action plan that Shireen was just talking about actually begins with a pretty explicit overview of the inequities in SSF, and talk about and explain the racial disparities. Someone asked about that. So we want to get into some of those details later, but thought that because those data are very specific to the topics we're going to be covering in upcoming meetings, we would wait for some of that data to share with you then. But we do have very explicit and SSF-focused data that we will be bringing forward to you all. And I don't know, Shireen, if there's anything else you wanted to say. But thank you so much. That was a lot to cover in a short period of time. That was like a year's worth of work.
Thank you for the time. And my email and my phone number, my cell phone number are on the last slide. So if other questions come up for you or other opportunities, please don't hesitate to connect with me, and really appreciate you all on a Saturday coming together to talk about racial justice in South San Francisco.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think with that then, Paige, are we ready to
Kim, there's
talk
just a few
about
questions about the
Okay,
Brown Act.
yeah.
So if you want to just clarify.
I didn't get the questions. I don't know what they are, but maybe what we can do with the specific Brown Act, I'm not sure if this is the question, but I'll just hopefully answer the question. So the Brown Act is related to being very explicit about capturing each vote, and so that we can report it out in our action minutes, so that those who couldn't join us today also can go back and understand what happened. And so that's why we go through and capture your hands. We take screenshots, and then we'll be taking notes, action notes, and then presenting them along with all of these materials and the recording on the website. So all of this conversation and motions, so actions towards voting, will be also posted on the website. Does that help?
Yes, and I think that we'd also gotten direction from the city attorney that the commission is actually not required to be, or it's not governed by the Brown Act. It's not one of the legislative bodies that is subject to that, and so I believe that there's a requirement that bodies that are under the Brown Act need to take votes one by one via roll call, but because this commission is not, that's why we're doing it via hand, raising hands and screenshots, and still providing the information to the public, but not doing a roll call vote.
That's right. Thank you for the additional information. So even though we're not technically under the Brown Act, we're acting as closely to that as possible, with the idea that we really want to emphasize transparency.
Great. Thank you. And if anyone else has questions about that, feel free to chat us. Thank you. Okay, so the draft framework, which is the third and final vote of today, we are proposing the levers of change framework, or a levers of change framework for the commission to use with recommendations. So the idea here is that we really want to set up the recommendation framework now so we know where we're going and where we want to be in a year, or where we need to be in a year, really, with clear, implementable, feasible, actionable recommendations and implementation plans, because that will inform how and what material is covered in the phase 1 meetings when we go into various topic areas. And so our proposed framework is organizing recommendations, or having recommendations that address programs, policies, the very big category of practices, approach, and culture, and potentially another lever or two if people feel like that is important, or have suggestions, and we might also come to identify them later in the process. So the idea of programs is really the work that happens and what services are provided. So that could be everything from school being, classes and special ed services, to what streets are being repaved by public works, and even park maintenance. Policies are laws, regulations, institutional procedures, and then also how resources are distributed and targeted to various neighborhoods and residents, because that's usually within the city or county or jurisdiction's budget decisions. And so institutional procedures, for example, are use of force policies that the police department has, which I know it has some information about on its website. Other regulations are their minimum wage requirements that apply to employers within the city or the county. And then how resources are distributed and targeted. Sometimes it's that resources are distributed with equal amounts per voting district for like a city councilor or a county board of supervisor member. Others are complaint-based processes. Often that's how often potholes are filled in many cities, is that if people call about them, the places that have the most calls will get services first. Other places, there's a more proactive and systematic approach around monitoring pavement conditions and making sure that they're triaged by people in public works instead of residents. And then practices, approach, and culture, which is really the big unwieldy one, but incredibly important, is really about organizational culture within different departments, programs, and organizations. It includes the recruitment, hiring, and professional development practices, how services are provided. So the way in which Shireen mentioned trauma-informed or restorative justice, those are some of the ways that services might be provided with a trauma-informed lens, or culturally competent, linguistically appropriate, so different languages that services are provided in. It also includes when, why, and how community engagement happens. So when non-employees are brought in to weigh in on decisions or provide input, what their role is, if they're an advisor, if they are more peripherally engaged, if they're clients only. And the idea here is really that culture is often what is not clearly defined, but that people can usually recognize it when they see it. And it often does perpetuate inequities if it's not intentionally changed to advance equity. So just a quick example of how that often happens is around hiring, is that if recruitment is happening primarily to top tier schools like UC Berkeley or Stanford, but not going to community colleges, that is going to limit the people who are likely to apply for positions to the demographics of those places in ways that often are inequitable. Or if positions are really just spread through word of mouth and through people's connections, the candidates who apply are likely going to look very demographically similar to the people who are already employed, and may not be any more diverse or reflect the community. And we, in the programs, policies, practices, approach, and culture, are really thinking about that for across different levels of government. So clearly the city is a primary focus for the commission, and what the city can do differently and city departments can do differently is very much central. And there may also be recommendations that are focused on the school district, the county, and other entities, nonprofit organizations, contracted entities with the city or the county, who may be tasked or invited to implement recommendations that the commission approves. So again, a lot. But I'm curious if
one thing, can I just add something, Paige? I was also thinking just thinking about what we've heard already from the commissioners. I think that we were hoping that these groupings, these levers of change, would account for both shorter term, like you already identified, and also longer term changes. I think they fall into these categories as we were imagining them. It looks like Commissioner Liliana, you have a question.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering specifically which one of these levers, if any, would encompass accountability. So like if we come up with all these policies, who's going to be the one to ensure that they're actually being followed? Like for example, you brought up the use of force policies from the police department, but ultimately since they're not elected officials, how can we ensure that these ideas that we come up with are actually being adhered to?
That's a great question. So one of the things, I guess we haven't mentioned this, but in addition to facilitating processes like this, conversations, we're also evaluators. And what that means is that we can help make sure that the implementation plans have clear ways of tracking change over time. And so when we develop those implementation plans, we will present to you as commissioners ideas for tracking change over time and specifically accountability. So one of the things that in other kinds of implementation plans like this one, it might be that updates happen to the Board of Supervisors or in a written form, or we can figure out the right mechanisms, but clearly include ways for reporting out in the future over specific actions. So I think that's a great question.
And I think that it's also right that accountability and oversight, in addition to monitoring in an ongoing way, are also very important pieces of an effective implementation plan, in that sometimes it's going to require a policy approach. Sometimes it might be an organizational culture approach where oversight needs to be included in people's performance reviews, or there's different ways depending upon what the recommendation is, but they're certainly incredibly important to identify, and we'll be focusing on that. And Commissioner Murray.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I can bring recommendations to the school board, but I'm only one of 5 people. And so I alone cannot make a decision. We can make the recommendation, but I alone can't make the decision. It has to be brought to my board.
Yeah, I appreciate that point, and I think probably others are thinking similar things. We want to make sure that the recommendations that we define, that we land on, are recommendations that are well vetted. And so in the second phase, part of what we're going to be doing is reaching out to the decision-making bodies that the recommendations are related to, and trying to get as close as possible to those recommendations that will go through and still address the deep inequities that exist. So I think we have a plan in place for making the recommendations as meaningful and authentic and possible as we can.
Anyone else from the commission? All right. Without any other levers that people feel like are really critical to consider right now, with the assumption that accountability and oversight will be included, but may not be their own. They'll be included in each recommendation.
I'll just say I have another comment. So while people are deciding if they're going to identify another lever, one question that came up was, where would goal setting fit into this framework? And I think that in the implementation plans, we will be sure, I guess I'll back up. We want to identify specific goals and outcomes so that we know where we're headed. And then the implementation planning would make sure that those strategies address the outcomes and goals. So we're going to be working towards that during this whole process.
Okay. So with that, we are going to ask the commissioners to again raise their hands if they approve of using the levers of change as the framework for recommendations, with possible additions when we actually craft them.
Okay, so does all the commissioners, we're asking you to vote for the levers of change. Paige, are you tracking that?
I am. So it looks like there's 4 commissioners right now that have not voted, 3. Just want to make sure that you're certainly allowed not to approve. I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity if you wish.
I think one just came in. Thank you for the reminder.
2 more.
Oh, we got a thumbs up from Commissioner Hermes. Thank you.
Great. So I think one more potentially. Okay. So it looks like all but one, and I will reach out to that person just to make sure that there's not tech issues. And again, screenshotting, and we'll include the votes in the action minutes. So either at least everyone except for one, and we'll see if it changes to unanimous. Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Paige.
Sorry, just quickly screenshotting. Okay. So for actually, Kim, do you just want to give us an overview of the phase 1 first?
Absolutely. So if we go, keep the next slide. We wanted to also remind everybody and sort of check in with you all about the specifics of the phase 1 meeting. So if you advance the next slide. We're proposing to approach each of the meetings in a similar way. So what we're thinking, and I think this actually addresses a couple of the questions that we've heard along the way from you all, is that for each of the content topics, that we would present highlights of relevant local data and existing programs and policies focused on reducing inequities and disparities in South San Francisco and the county. And then we would also present a presentation or highlights from experts or residents and staff from other cities that are trying new approaches or recent approaches to reduce inequities. And then we also, I think someone mentioned earlier, the reality of jurisdictional complexity and who has the authority, kind of this sphere of influence and authority to agree to recommendations or to change policies. And we want to bring that into the conversation, not to, I would say, dissuade us from making the recommendation, but to understand the reality. One of the things in my experience has been, and maybe now's the time to mention this, is that often with recommendations that are addressing deep-seated racist structural inequities, the system itself is very adverse to accepting these recommendations. And sometimes, and perhaps in this commission, we might actually decide that there is a recommendation that is going to be more complicated, and it might not actually be as effective in the short term, but perhaps an important one to consider. And, you know, I think that's part of the challenging conversations that we have ahead of us, because what I heard from everyone was that we want realistic and meaningful and actionable change, but I also heard we want recommendations that will address the deep-seated centuries of racism that exist. And so we want to be creative, we want to be realistic, and I guess I would just say one of the things that I feel like is relevant for this commission and for all of us who are on this call is you are the ambassadors for this process, and you are, I think, in a critical, I think we heard this earlier, leadership role in the community to help begin these conversations now with your colleagues, with the folks that need to know what's happening and how to participate for change. I think this is an opportunity to really have hard conversations and make meaningful change that might not have happened in another point of time recently. And so I offer that as you know, a way to share this information with your colleagues, and we will also help navigate some of those waters as well in the future. So that's kind of a long description, but I do think that's how we're anticipating setting up these conversations and meetings. And the other thing I would say is each of these meetings, kind of like today, there's a lot packed into a short period of time. And so we're going to have to figure out how to balance, you know, generations of historic racism and kind of decide how we're going to focus in and make recommendations that are meaningful. So again, I think as commissioners and as folks who are participating today, help us find the right data, and we will incorporate that to tell a story to get us to the recommendations that we feel like will make the change that we're talking about. Paige, would you add anything to that?
I think that we will, I think the only thing is for the presentations and highlights from experts and things that are happening in other places that we would consider. We know clearly we have limited time, and so we will be asking for people's suggestions and following up with people about their suggestions, and really trying to present a range of ways, right? Knowing that it's up to the commission kind of what makes the most sense for SSF and the region. So trying to have the spectrum of recommendations possible. Okay.
I'm going to just keep us moving to the topics and timeline. So again, this slide deck will be posted on the website. I know there's a lot of information, but what we're proposing is for meeting number 2, August 19th, to cover health and social services. Both of those topics, as you can see with the footnote, were identified in the commission charter. And so that's coming up very soon. And then meeting number 3, September 2nd, we're proposing to talk about public safety and policing. Number 4, September 16th, education and economic development. And economic development, as you'll see, has a different footnote. We identified this topic to align and feed into the work that's being done to develop the general plan, and so wanted to make sure to align with that. Meeting number 5, housing and housing affordability. And then number 6 is optional. We left that open if we wanted to come back and go deeper on any one of these topics, which might actually be the likely outcome of that, or if there's an additional topic that's identified. So wanted to just ask you all if that seems okay. Any comments or questions about the timeline and approach to each of these topics? Okay, so let's go to the next slide, because this is where we wanted to take a little time. I think we have about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and wanted to start getting your thoughts on the various topics that we've just identified, both those that were identified through the charter, but also that align with the general plan. So these are the questions that we're going to be asking you to comment on even after this meeting, because we want to get your take on these things. But we're interested in knowing from you what data you would like to share related to each of these topics, what policies and programs you're interested in learning more about, if there are specific places that you know of that are implementing innovative approaches, please let us know. And are there specific people, programs, and organizations with relevant expertise that we could invite to present on the topic? So I recognize that, again, that's a lot to cover in this, this format, but if people wanted to raise their hand and we could get started on taking your thoughts on this, and then after this meeting, if you have additional thoughts, we'd be happy to have you weigh in. Does anyone have some initial thinking that they'd like to share in commissioners? Commissioner Gladys.
Yes, I think I would like to see life expectancy by census tract, by race and ethnicity.
Mm-hmm. So some of the highlighting the disparities that exist in the area.
Yes. And
we have, oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
And the other point of data that I think it would be interesting to see is the Medi-Cal population in South
The Medi-Cal
City
population, yeah.
by race and age.
Thank you. Commissioner Liliana.
Change SSF, which is the coalition that I'm representing, we already put together a presentation on public safety alternatives, which we presented to certain city council members. But I would like to have the presentation done again in this format since it's more accessible to the public.
Okay, we can reach out to you and kind of figure out when and the best way to do that. Does that sound okay?
Thank you.
Any other initial thoughts on this? Commissioner Andrea.
Yeah, I think for the most the upcoming meeting for August 19th, I think around social services. I think it would be helpful to see data around how these social services are advertised in multilingual communities and multicultural communities. And yeah, that's kind of my initial thought for the next meeting.
So outreach and making sure that the outreach is multilingual and multicultural.
And that it's accessible to those communities who most need it.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Edith. Oh, can you unmute?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to follow up with that and know that we'll ask if there's any way to get data on monolingual speakers in South San Francisco, as you know, residents in the city, so that the same way that it was just already said, how is the information passed on to residents and how are they reached? Because technology, as we can see now with COVID-19 and the realities of those underrepresented, many times has to do with everything is on web pages.
Thank you. Commissioner Kayla.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. I think first, just a baseline on who is living in South City, their race and ethnicity, income levels, gender, etc. And then on education, a baseline there, like outcomes by race, all the things I just said, on like college and career matriculation, suspensions, expulsions, funding for the schools, things of that nature.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Liliana was next.
Thank you. I'd also like to collect data on all of this time spent patrolling different neighborhoods by the police department compared to the ethnic breakdown of those neighborhoods. A full report of all the arsenal that they have on hand, so how militarized they are, a report on overtime pay, a report on any complaints made against individual police officers. And I would also like to see a historical analysis of access to housing by race, and how it impacts who is a homeowner now versus who is most at risk for displacement because they're renting.
Okay. I think Commissioner Bobby Vaughn next.
Right, I'm actually kind of following up on Liliana's point and question. I understand that we have a police commission. So I would like to learn more about the police commission in terms of its effectiveness, or in terms of its charge, in terms of its role, with the understanding that, generally speaking, police commissions are designed to be sort of civilian ownership of policing. And I'm just curious, I would hope that there would be an opportunity for just to hear from the police commission, learn more about what they're learning, and challenges there. So I just want, when we think about structures, one of the structures in with respect to policing is a civilian police commission. And I would like to learn more about whether that is, what kind of role it has to play in these discussions.
Okay. Commissioner Murray.
Hi. When talking about education, I'd love to see somebody from our district, our superintendent, or one of the district leadership, give a presentation about what we have available in our district in terms of restorative practices and in terms of policies. We're talking about setting up an equity committee, or an equity, we have a focus on equity, and we're talking about setting up a committee on equity. And but that's the focus of every board member and every person that's in leadership in our district. So I would love to have her or one of the district, part of district leadership, give a presentation.
Okay. Thank you. I haven't heard yet from Commissioner Mark Nogales.
Thank you. Great suggestions by everyone. I kind of want to follow up on a couple of suggestions. In terms of data, I know that other cities have implemented various programs. I would love to hear maybe representatives from those cities if they can participate and tell us what worked, what hasn't for those cities in terms of specific programs. Maybe those programs can be implemented here, and maybe hearing from them what if they can do differently. Maybe we can learn from best practices from those cities that have actually already done progressive changes already.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, I think Commissioner Andrea, you had your hand up next, and then Edith.
Yes. So for the topic of housing, the city of San Jose has a project called Second Street Studios, which is run by First Community Housing, and it's one of the first permanent supportive housing projects in the city, which aims at housing extremely low-income households and really vulnerable populations, and it's a way to combat some of the really high housing costs in the region. So I think taking a look at this program, and seeing how we can learn from that and potentially look at implementing that in our city would be a good approach as well.
Absolutely. Before I call on people that I've heard from already, is there anyone else that I haven't heard from that would like to say something? Chair Nicholas or Commissioner Abasan or Munoz? Oh, Commissioner. Chair Nicholas, I think you're muted. It looks like you want to.
Yes. Hi. I would just like to have, like Mark said, or somebody said, the baseline. I know we have already a lot of resources around town, but then the issue is making sure that people are aware that these resources are available, and also how much usage do our underrepresented constituents are using these resources. Like, for example, we have the Asian American Recovery Services, the TK, the Safe Harbor, CORA. I just want to know how we can better also communicate that these services are available and what are the barriers. I know that, say, for example, in the Filipino community, it's still a stigma if you admit to having mental problems. And so those are issues I think that we have to tackle also. So it's not just because there's absence, and also sometimes peers tend to talk to their friends who don't know much about this. As an immigrant, I understand how difficult it is to navigate the system. But in order for us to make the system work and change the system, we have to know the system. Mm-hmm. That is very important. I lived it, I walked this.
Thank you so much. So before we take your comment, Edith, let's go to Cheska, Commissioner Cheska.
Hi, thank you. I would like to see data on the relation of mental health services with school reports. I'm not exactly sure how to phrase that or what's the exact terminology, but basically when let's say, for example, the guidance counselors send in reports to county services to seek aid from social workers whenever a student is failing. I think that will help us understand the effectivity of the roles of social workers in our communities in relation to policing as well.
Yeah, I appreciate your comment. And I think, you know, I'll just say this is not the only time that we're going to be gathering your input. So if you think of, oh, actually, I wanted to say this too, please let us know. But this is very helpful to get us started on what's really top of mind. Let's see. So Commissioner Edith.
Yes, thank you. And it is something I want to add to my comment. definitely with what I've been hearing also, I'm very interested to know if you can gather any data of South San Francisco as a city providing services for residents with developmental and intellectual disabilities, basically in housing, employment, and opportunities for recreation and leisure activities within not just the school district, but the departments, different departments, Park and Rec departments, and other departments in the city. Is there any data of how they're being served?
Okay, thank you. I did just get a comment that South San Francisco currently does not have a police commission. And so I think what I'll do with that information is take the comments and the requests for information about the police and decide what data we can try to get and try to bring that forward. So even though there might not be a police commission, there will be ways to get hopefully some information that would be able to share. And I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else on that. Oh, I think Mark Nogales, Commissioner Nogales, maybe you wanted to add something to that.
Not to that, but in terms of data, I know I've seen it in terms of the general plan, but in terms of the neighborhood makeup, I think it would be good for this community to see in terms of how the makeup of the city is in terms of demographics. I think it would be very good for us to see.
Okay, I think we have a few more minutes before we go to public comment. And I can see sort of people's minds thinking already, maybe this should be a recommendation or that should be a recommendation. And I think we're not quite there yet, but I appreciate your thoughts, your early ideas about specific recommendations. And so, you know, as participants of this meeting, as commissioners, please let us know your early thoughts on that. And just to let you know that the chat notes we're taking in, and we will capture that feedback. So really appreciate your contributions there. Okay, I think then I don't see, oh yes, Commissioner Gladys, it looks like you have another comment. Oh,
yes.
There we go.
One additional point of data is Child Protective Services reports in South City by race.
Thank you. Okay.
I just want to explicitly invite the two commissioners who haven't shared in this section yet to do so if they're interested. So Commissioner Azzopardi or Commissioner Faria.
Yeah, some valid points. The reason I haven't made comment, I think, as we start going through all these different programs, that's why it's critical that we have that meeting session 6 available, because as we're being presented information, we're going to have more questions on all these things that arise, as we've seen already. So I think the reason I haven't commented is I know I'll have questions as I get more and more information, because just from all the requests, there must be over a dozen requests for information, which for me personally will have questions. So that's why I haven't commented yet. I think as we get information, we'll learn more. Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And from the police perspective, yes, we do not currently have a police commission to answer that question, but I did hear the requests, and whatever we can get data-wise that will help this commission, I'll be happy to do the research and get back to you with that. That'll take some time because there was a lot out there, but we should be able to get that specifically before the police department session.
Thank you. Appreciate the commissioners jumping in. Okay, so I think that is the end of this portion of the meeting, and then we're going to be going into public comment. I'm happy to say we have a little extra time for public comment before 12. Although if we go after 12, we are prepared to stay. I think Paige will take over at 12. So before I open it to public comment,
I realize I missed,
yeah.
Commissioner McGovern rejoined and has something, I think, to say. So.
Okay, was there another commissioner who wanted to say something? I don't see.
Yes, sorry, Commissioner McGovern.
Hi,
Thank you.
I wanted to say, I think it's important for our recommendations and accessibility that we know where services and resources are located within the city compared to the population that are in the demographic that are suited to receive these benefits or where they're most needed, so that we know what needs to be implemented and where. And so I think that knowing that data is probably going to be important for our recommendations.
Thank you. And it looks like Commissioner Cheska has another comment. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. You're muted.
Commissioner Vanessa just mentioned this. It's about the mental health services that are accessible locally. I personally do not know much about them. From what I know, they're mostly delegated to county. So I think it would be great to have more information on what we have here at South San Francisco, rather than just the county level.
I know that a couple commissioners are going to have to leave between now and our end. So maybe before we take any other comments, I just really wanted to express just a deep appreciation for your time, for your thinking about this difficult work that we have ahead of us. And it's also an opportunity. And so really looking forward to working with everyone and hearing your thoughts and comments. We will be sending out an online evaluation form. It'll be brief. We'll send it out to you after this meeting, but with the idea that we want to do better each time. And so if you have recommendations, we'll be interested in getting your feedback. And we will,
sorry, I was just going to say that
Hey.
I'm going to invite people who are not commissioners to chat to us your email so we can include you on that as well. And I'll put that announcement in the chat.
Okay. So any final thoughts from the commissioners before we open it to public comment? Okay. So Paige. Oh, we have one Commissioner Liliana.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if this recording or if there's going to be minutes posted anywhere.
Yes, thank you for asking that. So we are recording this session and we will be posting all of the materials, so all of the slide deck and the handout to the webpage, and we can follow up with you to make sure that you have all that information of where it will be, because I know there was a lot covered today. And I think, you know, my hope is that as you look through the slide deck and think about each of the topics, that you will let us know what, you know, kind of building on the conversation that we just had, what more information you feel is critical to present. Obviously, and I'll just say this now, I don't know that we'll be able to cover everything, but we really want to try our best to capture information and share key data points for you to be able to make strong decisions and recommendations. Any other questions or comments before we go to public comment? Okay, Paige, do you want to?
Actually, it's you.
Okay, so thank you. So what we wanted to do is open it up now to public comment. That means, and maybe we'll restart the clock in a minute, but what we're going to be doing is having the public participants raise their hands virtually. So the same process that we used till now, which is to go onto the participant icon at the bottom. And if you would like to speak, to raise your hand, and then we will be calling on you as best as we can throughout to make sure that we hear from everybody. And if you are on the phone, you can join the queue by entering *9. Okay, so, and we also, in order to be able to hear from as many people as possible, we're asking people to keep their comments to 2 minutes. And we will be, again, taking action minutes and posting those as part of the minutes that go on the website.
And
so Paige.
While people join the queue, so again, you can either click on participants and then raise your hand to join the queue, or if you've called in by phone, you can do *9 and you'll join the queue, and we'll call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. While people do that, we're just going to do a quick summary of the comments that we received via chat. I think we've actually addressed many of them as they've come in around questions around the Brown Act and such. So if the co-hosts could all just look at the chat briefly and see if there's anything that we need to share.
I think we've addressed most of them. I see that Dan Martin has raised his hand. So Paige, do you want to do the timer? And we'll ask Dan Martin to unmute yourself. And I think we're lining up with IT folks to help Dan unmute themselves.
Hello,
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Wonderful. I just want to say hello and thank everybody for this excellent work. It's overdue. I also wanted just to support and share a couple things that have been going on for some time in regards to addressing racism and systemic oppression. Long story short, and I'll keep it very brief, is I'm a social psychologist, PhD, Howard University, and I work at Cal State East Bay. And we've created tools that allow communities to measurably reduce sexism, racism, while increasing people's emotional resilience by diminishing stress, anxiety, and depression. And I just wanted to share that with the committee because I'd love to be able to share that stuff pro bono as a citizen of South San Francisco. And it's also, of course, socially distanced, which is the great thing, so it can reach everybody.
Thank you so much.
Here, my pleasure.
We look forward to having you be part of the meetings in the future. Okay, so I have a couple other hands. Erin Adriano, go ahead and.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts in creating the task force. Like many others have already said, not only do I wish that this commission can enact real change, but I just ask that when you guys are looking for these solutions, that the commission has the understanding that these issues are deeply rooted in society. Also, I just wanted to stress that the commission do outreach to communities of intersectional identities, such as queer, people of color, because we are disproportionately affected by these issues that the commission aims to solve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erin. Appreciate those comments, absolutely. Okay, so I think our next participant is Danny Thomas Vang. Please join us.
Perfect. Are y'all able to hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today during the weekend, and I think that this is very valuable work. This is just a general comment for an interest area. I am curious if y'all will be looking at sort of rates and distribution of civic participation, sort of like how are people participating? Are they participating in hearings, speaking out about their experiences? Are they voting? And sort of like what are barriers to access to this? I think that if we pull back a little bit from the different interest areas, sort of like education, employment, and stuff like that, it's really important that the community, one, has access to civic participation and that they're engaging this. I think that's going to make more lasting change in the future. So that's just sort of a general comment.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Other public comment? Well, as people are thinking, I was wondering if there are opportunities to the point of making sure that as many people are participating in this opportunity, this commission, this perhaps overdue conversation, that you all, again, as participants of this meeting and as commissioners, invite your communities to join. We really want to extend this opportunity to weigh in and think through these issues, and so please invite folks. Okay, so we have Ethan Mizzi. Please join us.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I know it was hard. It was hard for me to wake up for this, so I bet it was the same for you guys. I'm pretty hopeful for this committee. I'm much more hopeful than I was before this meeting started. I really want this to be productive and to make recommendations for actual substantial change. And from watching this meeting, I'm very hopeful that the commissioners will recommend changes that will be impactful. Because oh my God, my dog, I'm sorry. Because frankly, if this commission is to exist, it should be done right or not at all. And then I do have just a general suggestion that these meetings be made more accessible, because I know a lot of people, I know that we're having trouble finding the agendas and Zoom links. So that's just like a general thing. And then I do have a policy suggestion for the commission to look into. As previously stated by some of the commissioners, South City doesn't have a police commission currently, and I really think that that's something this commission should look into establishing, or at least recommend establishing.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your thinking and thoughts, and we will summarize all of this input and bring it back to you.
And
another sorry?
Request. We have a request from someone via chat, so let me just find that person and unmute them. 1 second.
Great.
I apologize for, I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing this, but Hyun Park.
Hi, it's pronounced Hayen Park. Hi, I'm listening in from the city of Seattle in Chinatown International District, and I just wanted to thank you and thank the commissioners for this really amazing public meeting. It was really a pleasure to get to, listen in and observe the documents that I'm really excited to share. I work in local government, and so I think these types of documents that have been provide fantastic detail and language, very inclusive and anti-racist language that I hope that we can share here up in the Pacific Northwest. Thank you.
I feel like I can't resist this comment, but I know we've focused on, the hopes and challenges. And one of the things that comes to mind based on that information that we just heard is, South San Francisco could come out as a leader in the nation if, there's all kinds of opportunities here. And I don't want to simplify the work that's ahead of us. I don't want to simplify the challenges, but it is unique. It's an important opportunity. I don't see any other public comment requests. Am I missing somebody? Paige, do you have any personal chats that are coming to you?
I'm not seeing anyone, which is I'm very surprised by, not to mention that everyone has been well under 2 minutes. So.
Okay. Well, maybe I have to say I've anticipated a lot of things, but I have not anticipated that we would be ahead of time right now. So I don't know if there are other just thoughts that commissioners want to comment on as we end our time together. We have another half an hour, so we could end early, or we could continue if folks have some ideas that they want to contribute right now.
James would like to make a comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Correct. Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Hi, my name is James Coleman. I've been a resident of South City my whole life, attending Ponderosa, Alta Loma, and South City High. I'm also a candidate for City Council in District 4. And first, I'd like to thank all the commissioners and participants for attending, providing their perspectives in good faith, and being open to real change in the city. I also want to urge the commissioners and the public to look at the cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco and their plans to create alternative groups of first responders to respond to non-violent and non-criminal calls for assistance in the community. And these groups would be primarily composed of social workers and mental health professionals who will not present a life-threatening risk to those that they are helping. The United States currently experiences around 1,000 killings on behalf of the police every year. And when looking at comparable countries, the UK experiences 3, Australia experiences 4, and Canada experiences 36. So this is something that is unique to the system of public safety that we have in the United States and the community of the United States, as well as, more specifically, South San Francisco. We deserve alternatives, public health alternatives to the police department when our community members call for help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just say, I think, James and maybe Dan, prior to this comment, offered some specific requests and information, and we would really welcome specific links to websites if you want to chat that to us or get in touch with us after this meeting. We want to make sure to highlight what you feel like are best practices and information that could help make strong recommendations. Okay, I see a couple hands. Yeah. So Dolores Piper, can we have you join us? Dolores, you're on. I don't hear Dolores. Did we lose you, Dolores? Maybe while we try to get Dolores to join, we'll have Gustavo Lopez join, and we'll come back to Dolores.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having this meeting today. So my name is Gustavo. I too also am a former alumni of Alta Loma Middle School, South San Francisco High School, and El Camino. I also was a former teacher at South City a few years ago. A couple of things that I just wanted to kind of piggyback off that have been said. One, to make this more accessible, really thinking about maybe having a joint stream with translators, right, for folks that are non-English speakers but that are residents of the community. Also to being able to think about future reports not only being in English but in other languages for residents in our community, that make it more accessible for them to get this information. As an educator, I just want to speak on just some recommendations. I was able to graduate from USF from the Urban Education and Social Justice Program. It's kind of like a grow your own program that aims at getting more teachers of color to teach in urban education. I definitely think that's a recommendation, to look at some grow your own programs to get more folks of color and marginalized community members to be able to, address some of the systemic issues that we have schools that are predominantly students of color, but they're predominantly being taught by white teachers that might not have their cultural ethnic background. And so looking at programs that invest into helping, get more teachers of color, also programs to invest to get more, civic participation from folks of color in our city politics by investing in programs that can help them help them be able to get more involved in their community politics. Lastly, I just really hope that we can really use some of the progressive organizations that are bringing a lot of great needs that are being addressed all over the Bay Area, from the Bay Area Organizing Project, to a lot of these different groups that are addressing systemic racism with police and the community. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Yes, grow your own. We will definitely take note of that. Let's see. So the person who was on who I couldn't hear, I don't see on the list anymore. So maybe she'll come back. So meanwhile, can we have Aristel de la Cruz join us, please?
Hi. I apologize if I'm gonna sound repetitive here. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize if I'm sounding repetitive. I got in kind of late. And so I just wanted to, I know this is the first meeting. I wanted to, by the way, I'm an educator in South City. And so I wanted to stress the importance of the commissioners on here and just our city council in general, just being data driven and research driven in terms of looking at like how public safety is authentically manifested in our community. Right, and I want to push back on any narratives that says that South City is different, because I've often heard this narrative that South City is different or our police department is different, yet no one has presented data that shows that they're actually different, or any research that says that we're actually different. They just say we're different. And so like I want us to be data driven. I want us to look at research, the sociological research. I want us to look at how other countries and other cities that are sort of ahead of us in terms of public safety, in terms of innovation, and the ways that they approach it. And to really interrogate the idea is the presence of militarized and increased police really preventative, or is it in fact reactive, right? And to unpack what that really means within our discussions around public safety.
Thank you very much. We will take those comments into consideration as we prepare for each of the topics. And if you have specific data, Aristel, that you want us to include, please let us know via chat or outside of this meeting. We're interested in wanting to include data that's the most relevant for the commissioners and public.
And just a reminder that people who are on their phone, if they've called into the meeting, can hit *9 to be added to the queue.
Okay, so Commissioner Cheska.
Hi, thank you. I know everyone have said something along the same line, but I would just like to say that I would love for a public outreach commission to stem out of the efforts of this commission, because like what we've been mentioning before, there's a huge language barrier and socioeconomic disparities that does not allow our community members to know valuable information and valuable resources that we have to offer at county level and local level here at South San Francisco. For example, the library has done a really good job at creating flyers. Like they have this big section in the library where you can find out about county and local resources. And now that the library is closed due to COVID-19, there's really not much point of information for our residents. And we can't expect everyone to just go online and find out what we have, because even if they have our website, there's really not much to look into that. And also just basically access to electronics is not a thing for every family or every community member here at South City. So I would like to see a public outreach commission that is concentrated towards disseminating information on the resources that we have.
Thank you very much. So Commissioner Bobby, I think we'll have one person who's not showing up, but her name is Patricia, and then we'll have you go next, okay? So, Patricia. Paige.
Yes, Patricia, I think you just hit mute again. You were. Okay, we may have. Patricia,
So I think we'll just have Commissioner. Oh, okay. Sorry, having technical difficulties.
Unfortunately, we cannot hear you, Patricia. So, we will
try again, Patricia, one more time. Okay. So let's have Commissioner Bobby go ahead.
No, I'm happy to defer to public comment. I had a more logistical question for the commission, but I want to respect the public comment time and was only going to talk if there weren't members of the public.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay, well, we'll come back to you then. How's that? Yeah, so I think Dolores Piper is back. So go ahead, Dolores.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. My 12-year-old nephew sitting next to me had to fix me up here.
Love that.
I am the great aunt of Derek Gaines, who was executed in 2012 by this police department. And as you all know, the police officer who executed him went on to a bigger job at San Francisco Police Department. So I decided to work with the San Francisco Police Department and became part of their working group on their rewriting their new anti-bias policing policy. And there were 282 recommendations for change of the San Francisco Police Department by the U.S. Department of Justice. That's a lot of recommendations, and they are gradually working on them one by one. We need oversight on this police department in South San Francisco. What occurred for my nephew should never have happened to anyone in this city. And I very much appreciate that we are going to look at policing as a whole. Number one, when you're looking for funding, tasers are deadly. They should be taken away, and all of that expense for keeping them up to date should be removed. Also, they should have body cams if they don't already. I have never had an explanation from this police department as to what changed in terms of their policing after the execution of my nephew. Also, I have corresponded with all the council members about my situation, about Derek, and I have never, ever received an email back. That's from the mayor all the way down. I am deeply grateful that you have put together this commission, and I look forward to taking part in it with public comment each time you meet. Thank you.
Well, let me tell you. Thank you so much, Dolores, and I'm very, very sorry for your loss. We will be looking at the recommendations that you outlined in our work, and we'll take your additional suggestions.
We have a phone number ending in 7309.
7309, you're up.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Go right ahead. Yep.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. This is Rich Garbarino calling in as a member of the public. And I just want to thank the commission members for the hard work they're about to embark on. There are many, many issues out there. And as one of the previous callers identified himself as a candidate, I am identifying myself as a candidate as well. Your task is great. Your challenges are many. And yet I'm hopeful and that you will all come to conclusions. Some of them are going to be difficult to accept perhaps, but nonetheless, they have to be made. Solutions are only achieved by hard, difficult decisions. And this group that is there today participating in this commission, I know are up to the task to meet those challenges and make those decisions. And I'm very pleased that I was able to put this commission together and I'm very proud of the members who are serving on it. And I wish you nothing but success in your endeavors, and looking forward to seeing what recommendations you all come up with. I've heard some interesting ones, and I think they are perhaps very accurate and timely indeed. So keep up the good work. You've just begun. I think that as you go on, the recommendations and solutions that you come up with will be something that we will all be able to look at, digest, and perhaps maybe adjust a little bit here and there, but nonetheless, I look forward to them. So again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for giving up your Saturday mornings and part of your afternoon to participate in this very, very vital commission that's going to address the issues of our times today. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for joining. Let's see, we have, I think, there's a couple commissioners, but there is someone, Marcela Rivera. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. I would just like to say that I'm really happy that this commission's here. Sorry, I was just working out, but a little out of breath. I think it's important to note that just as Dolores said, she's reached out to all the council members and has been ignored in the past. And I think following that, we have seen how the council members have ignored public comment or just refused to read them aloud and allow for call-ins during meetings. So I feel like hopeful that you guys are taking public comments here, but I think that's something that can easily be implemented in other council meetings, because I think that engaging with the community and hearing what the community has to say is very important. And we shouldn't just look at these like gestures and be like, oh, we did something good, like we created a committee. I think we need to look for real change. And you really do need to be listening to the community members like Dolores and maybe looking into those resources that James brought up and Gustavo and other people who have called in. So I really hope that we're not just patting ourselves on the back for making this committee, but that we're really looking to, again, create monetary change that will be beneficial for all community members in San Francisco or South San Francisco, because I think we've seen that there are people who get left behind in this city. And I think that now is the time to really help them and bring their stories and their experiences to the table and discuss how we as a city can help and uplift each other during these times. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcela. Patricia Hurtado, I think you're the next up.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
We can. Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So you have about 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been a resident for over 22 years. I attended Bury, Altaloma, graduated from South City High. I might go off on a tangent, please bear with me. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings surrounding current events and this commission, so my soul is just urging to release them all. The mayor had mentioned in a letter to the city that there's more than one virus going around, and the one that's not being openly talked about with depth is the single most evident viral disease that is collectively affecting our entire South City community, and it's trauma from this pandemic. Trauma is basically anything less than nurturing. It doesn't discriminate against age, race, gender, occupation, socioeconomic status. It affects anyone at any time, and it's here. The consequences in South City have been job loss, food insecurity, housing instability, lack of health care, social services, loss of human connection. The list goes on. For some individuals and families, it's their first major traumatic event. But for my neighbors, specifically the community of color, Black and Brown, we are disproportionately experiencing layers upon layers of unresolved trauma. And this is through years of inequity and lack of diversity across all systems. This pandemic has exacerbated the consequences of new and unresolved trauma, which we are seeing through unethical and illegal behavior from, not just the community, but systems alike. Most talked about is the police. Conversations I know are going to get intense, very uncomfortable, and so I hope this commission brings about the change that is being asked of. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I don't see any other public comment, and I did at one point see a couple commissioners who wanted to speak. Bobby Vaughn?
Yeah, I guess I just had a question.
Oh, wait, now we can't hear you. There we go.
Oh, all right. I had a question about sort of the mechanics of our meetings and how we communicate. And so I'll say it this way: there's a tension, I believe, between transparency and the public having a window into our work. And also on the other side, everyone, most of the moderators have talked about the difficult conversations that we're likely to have. So I've never served on a commission that was governed by any type of Brown Act. So I'm wondering if someone can help me understand how we envision having difficult conversations, honest conversations, challenging conversations perhaps, which is needed, with the eyes of the world, literally, logging into a public Zoom meeting without the benefit of closed sessions, without the benefit of discussions, perhaps where we might be able to speak more frankly. So that's what's rattling around in my head right now, and I just wanted to sort of put that out there to see if people have any thoughts about the tension between sort of a deliberative work, or deliberating on sensitive issues, and most bodies, public bodies, have a process by which everything isn't done publicly, and I'm wondering just how we envision our work with those issues.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Vaughn. This is Paige, I'll just jump in for a moment. So we had clarified with the city attorney that the commission is not actually under the Brown Act, so we are committed to having open meetings and being as transparent as we possibly can, with the recognition that we also are not required to do all of the things that the Brown Act requires. So we are allowed to have, for example, email work or other things that may happen without the public being invited, even though we will be reporting back on that in public meetings. At the same, so I guess not at the same time, one of the things that we are encouraging commissioners to do as part of the idea of calling in is some of the conversations may happen one-on-one or in small groups outside of meetings. There may very well be some work groups that happen that are set up to go through recommendations for specific sectors or specific types of recommendations. That is all to be determined. And part of the calling in, right, is about trying to give space for sensitive conversations and where people may feel defensive, encouraging people to reflect. And so recognizing that may happen outside of commission meetings, one of the things that may that we're going to be considering and we'll be discussing with commissioners, certainly in the chair, is having a little bit of time at the beginning of commission meetings to have people speak to or summarize kind of conversations that have happened outside of meetings kind of since the last meeting, briefly, so that the members of the public are at least somewhat caught up, and also that can be an opportunity, if people have said something that's offensive or feels insensitive, to model learning and growing and having some accountability for that as well. So those are some of the things that we're considering. Does that at least address some of the things that you were
It does.
Okay, thank you. And then I don't know, Chair Nicholas, if you want to say anything else, or Kim.
I'll defer to Chair Nicholas. It looks like Chair Nicholas's audio isn't working very well. I know a number of us have to hop off at 12, so that's okay. Chair Nicholas, are you back? So while we wait for Chair Nicholas, I have a Commissioner Liliana is interested in making a comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to kind of revisit what the mayor said about the commissions being formed. And I think it needs to be acknowledged that I don't think this commission would exist at all had it not been for the work of community members and activists, a lot of whom I work with in Change SSF. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm acting as a representative, but I'm only one person. And all the people that I've been working with have been the ones at the forefront of this push for our elected officials to hear the people of the community. So I think that really needs to be acknowledged, that the formation of this, the reason why we're all here, is because of the power of the people in the community asking for it. It wasn't the elected officials who wanted to start talking about this. And I think that needs to be acknowledged.
Thank you, and we look forward to having you and your colleagues provide information and recommend ideas for us to consider. Commissioner Kayla Powers, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so in spirit of being responsive to community members and comments, the police commission, the oversight commission has come up multiple times. I don't think we need like 9 months to agree that that's a good idea, and it costs essentially nothing to implement that. So I'm wondering if there are certain things we can do as we go instead of just waiting for 9 months.
I think that's a very interesting idea, and what we'll do is we will take that recommendation initially and bring it back to the staff and consider how we can bring that up.
And Eddie from the public has a comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Go ahead, Eddie, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to call in and say, I think it's really great that we have the moment to speak here publicly with the public comment function here. I think every time there's a public comment forum, whether it be the school board meeting or in this commission here, I hear from people in the community I've never heard from that have great ideas and are people that I want to connect with and kind of build a more inclusive South San Francisco that holds our police accountable and our elected officials in deciding where we want to prioritize. And I just want to say that all in contrast to our South San Francisco City Council. At every meeting, there is no public, we cannot call in and speak as I am now. The Mayor Garbarino doesn't even give the public 2 minutes to speak. All he does is have us write in, and then they simply acknowledge our comments. And there can be maybe 100, 150 comments that he silenced. And he'll simply say, they're in the record and moving on. So he dismisses our voice, silences us, and moves on when the people want to speak. And the only time we do have to speak is these minor commissions and even the school board. So also, Pat Murray, thank you for the public comment. That's the bare minimum. And I hope Garbarino can do that also. And everyone that's here, James Coleman is running for District 4 against Mayor Garbarino. So if you want to be heard by the people and you want someone to represent the working class, vote for James Coleman in District 4. Thank you.
Okay, do we have other public comment that anyone is interested in offering? We have about 5 minutes technically. Andrew, it looks like you wanted to speak. Go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Andrew, you need to
Yeah.
there you
are,
are,
you did for a second, but it goes back. it went back to mute. It flashes and then it comes back. There you go. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just a prospective management fellow. I was listening to the comments, and it seems that there's a really big gap between the public and the administration. I just wanted to know what can be put in place in terms of a public policy to enhance the relationship between the public and the management.
Right. So I think what I hear you saying is making sure that there's broad involvement from community. Is that right?
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I think what I've heard both from the commission and actually from people who have called in today, that most of you, and I'd have to go back and look at the data, but I feel like a good percentage, a high percentage of the folks that are on this call are from SSF, and that is critical in terms of creating recommendations that reflect community voices. And I know that not everybody who perhaps would have wanted to join today is here, so I hope that you as folks who have joined this first meeting can invite folks to future meetings, and we can take your feedback and make sure that there are opportunities to continue to hear people. So thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up. I'm looking. Nicholas, is there anything you'd like to say?
I think we may have unfortunately lost Chair Nicholas for audio.
Okay. So while we're waiting for Chair Nicholas to log back in, we wanted to make sure that everyone has the contact email, mayorscommission@ssf.net. Please reach out to us and let us know if there's anything that you'd like us to highlight in terms of data or people to invite. We will be working on some of the suggestions that we heard today immediately, taking your feedback and bringing it back to the planning process so that we can act as we can on those things that we have agreement on. We also are trying to respect the process that we've set up, so this is going to be a balancing act. And I also, in the chat, just want to say there's a couple folks that want to make sure that the data is disaggregated, so meaning bringing out differences between racial ethnic groups, which we will do and traditionally do for all of our projects to make sure to understand the disparities across race ethnicity. So we will be bringing you a lot of data and really, again, want to just appreciate your spending your Saturday morning with us. This has been, from my perspective, it's been really important to get to know you a little bit, to hear your concerns, to hear your hopes for this commission. And we really look forward to continued conversations and invite disagreements, and at the same time working towards something that we can move forward on that makes change.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. My audio keeps on going on and off, and I don't understand. They just keep on making me redial again. Anyhow, I missed some of it, but like you said, please feel free to send us this any information or any questions that you have in this email address that Kim was showing. I just want to thank everybody for their participation and honest opinion. I know there will be harder conversations following this, and maybe that's the reason also why not a lot of people are here, is because this is an early meeting, but the following meetings will be from 4 to 6 on those dates that you have already. I'm sorry if I am repeating whatever you have said, but because I just keep on going back and forth. I'm continuously on, but you just can't hear me.
Thank you so much. And we have one last comment. we'll do 2 minutes for Commissioner Liliana. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if it's possible to rename the email that we can contact at. Just again, like I said, I'm just one member of the community, but I don't want to sit back and watch like the work that my peers have been doing be credited to one person. So I would like to suggest that it be renamed instead of the Mayor's Commission to something like SSF Equity or the People's Commission or something along those lines.
Okay, we can take that suggestion and we'll get back. I don't know if that's something we can change, but maybe we could add to it, add to the name. Any other final comments? I don't see any hands raised. So I think with that, Chair Nicholas, are we ready to conclude our meeting today?
Hearing no objections, and am I right? There's no objections. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much, everyone,
Thank you,
for joining us today.